The night was a canvas of bruised purples and inky blacks. Stretched taut over the sleepy town of Havenwood, most folks were tucked away, dreaming of sun-drenched mornings or forgotten chores. But for Officer Jake Riley, a patrol car was his second home, and the hum of the engine, a constant, low thrum against the quiet hum of his own lingering sorrow. It had been a year, almost to the day, since he'd lost Max, his K-9 partner, his shadow, his best friend. The emptiness was a phantom limb, an ache that flared unexpectedly. Usually when the passenger seat of his cruiser felt too vast, too silent. Tonight, the silence was broken by the crackle of his radio. Unit 307 dispatched to an abandoned gas station. Old Route 9. Report of suspicious activity. Possible smoke sighting. Over. Jake's grip tightened on the steering wheel. An abandoned gas station. Old Route 9. The words painted a desolate picture in his mind. Forgotten asphalt. Overgrown weeds. The ghostly silhouette of crumbling pumps against the moon. 307 copy. En route, he replied, his voice a low rumble. He steered the patrol car onto the older highway, the streetlights quickly thinning out, giving way to the oppressive darkness of the rural stretch. The air grew cooler here, carrying the faint, earthy scent of pine and damp soil, but beneath it, subtly at first, then more distinctly, a different smell began to infiltrate the cabin, a acrid, chemical tang, underscored by something disturbingly organic, like burning hair or singed flesh. It was a smell that twisted his gut, a primal warning. He flicked on his high beams, cutting through the darkness, illuminating the ragged edges of the abandoned road. Rust-eaten signs for long-dead businesses flashed past, relics of a bygone era. The gas station loomed ahead, a skeletal structure against the bruised sky, its faded, peeling sign, a relic of a once vibrant era. Now sagged precariously, half obscured by tangled vines. The windows of the convenience store were boarded up, black squares staring out like empty eyes. As he drew closer, the smell intensified, growing thick and nauseating. It wasn't just smoke, it was something burning with a malicious intent. A knot formed in Jake's stomach. This wasn't just kids playing with matches. This felt deliberate. He pulled the cruiser to a stop, parking strategically to illuminate the front of the dilapidated building. The air was heavy, charged with a strange, unnatural stillness, broken only by the distant chirping of crickets. No suspicious activity visible, just the eerie quiet. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the thumping of his own heart. Taking a deep breath, Jake unbuckled his seatbelt and reached for his flashlight, its beam a comforting solid weight in his hand. He stepped out of the car, the crunch of gravel under his boots unnervingly loud in the stillness. His gaze swept across the deserted lot, searching for any sign of movement, any shadow that might detach itself from the gloom. Nothing, just the faint, sickly sweet scent of gasoline hanging in the air, mixing with the sharp tang of burning. He moved cautiously, his senses on high alert. The front of the building was dark, but a faint, flickering orange glow pulsed from behind the main structure. Beyond the rusting fuel pumps, it wasn't a raging blaze. No towering flames licking at the sky. This was something smaller, more contained, which, paradoxically, made it feel even more sinister. A small fire hidden away like a secret. His hand instinctively went to the reassuring weight of his sidearm. Not drawing it, but feeling its presence. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to be careful, to expect the worst. A chilling premonition, a cold dread, snaked its way up his spine. It was the same feeling he'd had that last day with Max. A prickle of unease that had quickly escalated into devastating reality. He pushed the memory down, Focusing on the task at hand, the glow grew stronger as he approached the side of the building, casting dancing shadows that distorted the overgrown weeds and broken concrete. The air here was noticeably warmer, the smell of burning more potent, sickly sweet and metallic. He could hear a faint crackling sound now, like dry wood catching fire. But then, cutting through the crackle, something else emerged, a low, pained whimper. Jake froze. His blood ran cold. That wasn't the sound of an animal caught in a brush fire. That was the sound of deep, profound distress. A dog. His heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He quickened his pace, rounding the corner of the building, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, slicing into the heart of the orange glow, and then he saw it. The image hit him like a physical blow, punching the air from his lungs, stealing his breath. His eyes widened in horror, searing the scene into his memory. A permanent scar on his psyche. A K9 dog. There was no mistaking the sturdy, professional harness, partially obscured by the inferno engulfing its body. The dog was a German shepherd, its fur, or what was left of it, consumed by greedy, orange flames. It was tied to a fuel pump, a thick, brutal rope binding it tightly, ensuring there was no escape. Its struggles were weak now, its legs thrashing feebly against the asphalt, its body racked with spasms, its head was thrown back. A raw, guttural whimper escaping its throat, its eyes wide, reflecting the horror of its own immolation. Pools of terror and unimaginable pain. No. The word tore from Jake's throat, a guttural roar of pure disbelief and rage. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some random act of vandalism. This was a deliberate, monstrous act of unspeakable cruelty. The image of Max, strong and loyal in his prime, flashed before his eyes. A searing accusation. Someone had done this. Someone had tied a living, breathing, innocent creature to a death pyre. Adrenaline surged, blinding him to everything but the desperate. Burning animal. All thoughts of caution, of calling for backup before approaching, vanished in a haze of raw instinct. There was only the dog and the flames. He had to save it. He had to. The world narrowed for Jake, shrinking to the agonizing tableau of the burning dog and the overwhelming, suffocating heat. His training, years of disciplined response, kicked in, overriding the shock and the burgeoning fury. He didn't have time to process the horror. He only had time to act. Hold on. Buddy, I'm here, he roared, his voice hoarse, more a primal sound than a coherent sentence. He tore off his uniform jacket, a thick, heavy fabric, and beat at the flames. A frantic, desperate attempt to smother them. The polyester of his uniform melted slightly from the intense heat, the acrid smell of burning fabric joining the already sickening stench. He ignored the scorching heat that licked at his exposed skin, ignored the sharp, stinging pain on his hands. The dog's whimpers were getting weaker, each one a dagger in his heart. The knots binding the German shepherd to the fuel pump were viciously tight, cinched with a sadistic precision. Rope, thick and synthetic, had melted slightly into the dog's singed fur, making it even harder to untie. Jake's fingers, already protesting the heat, fumbled frantically. He could feel the blistering sensation beginning on his fingertips, but he pushed past it, gritting his teeth. Almost got it, buddy. Just hold on. The dog, its eyes still wide with terror, let out a choked cry, a sound that would haunt Jake for years. Its body convulsed, a final, desperate struggle against the inevitable. Jake's own breath hitched. He had to be faster. He pulled harder, twisting his hands, trying to wrench the melted rope free. It wouldn't give. He glanced around, desperate, his eyes scanning for anything, a knife, a sharp edge. There was nothing, just the flickering orange hell and the dog's fading strength. He changed tactics, abandoning the knots. He'd have to break it with a guttural yell. He braced his feet and pulled, using all his strength, straining against the unyielding rope. His muscles screamed in protest. The fuel pump, old and rusted, groaned under the pressure. Sweat, mixed with the beginnings of tears, streamed down his face, blurring his vision. Suddenly, with a sickening snap, the rope gave way, tearing free from the pump. The dog, no longer tethered, collapsed onto the asphalt, still engulfed in smaller, lingering flames. Jake didn't waste a second. He threw his jacket over the dog, patting down the remaining embers, desperately trying to extinguish every last flicker. The dog's whimpers had subsided to faint gasps, its body trembling uncontrollably as the last flame sputtered out, revealing patches of raw, exposed skin beneath the singed fur. Jake gently scooped the dog into his arms. It was heavier than he expected, its limp weight a chilling testament to its ordeal. Its breathing was shallow, ragged, each inhale a struggle. He cradled the animal close, trying to shield it from further harm. Even as his own hands throbbed with agony, "Stay with me, boy," he murmured, his voice cracking. "You're safe now. I got you." He half ran, half stumbled towards his patrol car, every step a burning prayer. He reached the cruiser, fumbling with the back door, his hands shaking. He gently laid the dog onto the back seat, as carefully as if it were a fragile piece of glass. The dog's eyes, still wide with shock, met his for a moment. They held an ancient, profound pain, but also, surprisingly, a flicker of something else, a deep, almost human gratitude. "Dispatch. This is Unit 307. I have a severely injured K9, possible burns. In my vehicle, request immediate emergency vet unit to my location. And backup, Priority 1, Old Route 9 gas station. ASAP." Jake barked into his radio, his voice strained, raw with emotion. He started the engine, flicking on his sirens and emergency lights, the wail piercing the quiet night, a beacon of urgency, as he pulled away from the infernal scene, the smell of burning still clinging to him. Jake glanced in the rearview mirror at the dog. Its breathing was shallow, its body trembling. He reached back a hand, stroking its head as gently as he could, trying to avoid the burned areas. Its fur, what was left of it, felt coarse and brittle. His gaze fell upon its collar. It was a standard K9 collar, black and sturdy, but almost melted in places. He leaned closer, squinting in the dim light of the car's interior. There was a name tag, charred and distorted, but he could just make out a few faint, raised letters. He ran a finger over them, tracing the barely discernible indentations. RINGO. The name hit him like a second blow, cold and sharp, replacing the burning agony in his hands with a different kind of shock. Ringo. The name echoed in his mind. Familiar. Chillingly so. Ringo wasn't just any K9. Ringo was the K9 partner of Detective Amelia Hayes. Amelia Hayes. The name brought with it a cascade of other memories, other whispers that had circulated quietly through the precinct for weeks. Amelia Hayes, the brilliant, tenacious detective, a rising star in the force, known for her relentless pursuit of justice and her unwavering bond with Ringo. Amelia Hayes, who had mysteriously disappeared almost a month ago. The official story was personal leave. A quiet, almost clinical explanation for the sudden vanishing of one of the force's most promising talents. But the whispers had told a different story. Rumors of foul play, whispers of a high-profile corruption case she'd been working on, involving powerful local figures. A case that had suddenly gone cold after her disappearance. Jake, engrossed in his own grief for Max, had paid little attention, dismissing it as precinct gossip. But now, Ringo, severely burned, tied up, left for dead at an abandoned gas station? This wasn't a coincidence. This was a message, a brutal, horrifying message. A fresh wave of rage, colder and more focused than the initial burst, swept over Jake. Someone had done this to Ringo. Someone had tried to silence Amelia. And then, finding Ringo, had tried to erase the last vestige of her. A final sadistic act. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, pushing the siren harder, accelerating towards the emergency vet clinic. The dog's shallow breaths filled the car, each one a testament to its struggle for life, and a silent, terrible promise of vengeance for Jake. This wasn't just about saving a dog anymore. This was about justice. For Ringo, for Amelia, and for every forgotten soul lost in the shadows of power and corruption. He glanced at Ringo again. The dog's eyes were still open, fixed on him. A silent plea, a quiet strength. And in that moment, Jake knew. He wasn't just an officer responding to a call. He was a man with a renewed purpose. A grief-stricken heart suddenly ignited by a furious, righteous resolve. The emptiness Max had left was still there, but now a new, powerful current flowed through him, pulling him inexorably towards the truth. The emergency veterinary clinic was a blur of fluorescent lights and hushed urgency. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a woman with kind eyes and hands that moved with practiced precision, took charge of Ringo as soon as Jake carried him through the doors. The air inside, usually sterile, was thick with the metallic tang of antiseptic and the faint. Sweet smell of despair, severe burns, significant smoke inhalation, Dr. Reed murmured. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she and her team gently placed Ringo on an examination table. We'll do everything we can. Officer? He's a fighter. Jake stood by, helpless. As the medical team worked around the clock, he watched, an agonizing ache in his chest as they administered IV fluids, sedated the trembling dog, and meticulously began to clean and dress his horrendous wounds. Every whimper from Ringo, even sedated, sent a fresh wave of nausea through him. He found himself reliving the horrific scene at the gas station. The acrid smoke, the desperate whimpers, the image of the flames. Max. He saw Max and Ringo's pain, and it fueled a cold, hard resolve within him. Hours later, Dr. Reed emerged from the operating room, her face grim. He's stable for now, Officer Riley. Critical. But stable. We've treated the burns. But the smoke inhalation is severe. He's on a ventilator. It's going to be a long road, and there are no guarantees. But he's young, and he's clearly very strong. She paused, her gaze meeting Jake's. What happened to him? Jake recounted the story, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, a desperate attempt to contain the fury simmering beneath the surface. He omitted nothing, from the discovery of Ringo tied to the pump to the terrifying realization of who Ringo was. Dr. Reed listened, her face hardening with each detail. Someone did this to him deliberately, she said. Her voice laced with a quiet fury that matched Jake's own. This wasn't an accident. This was an act of pure evil. Jake nodded, his jaw tight. I know. And I think it's connected to Detective Hayes' disappearance. Dr. Reed's eyes widened slightly. Amelia, I know her. She brought Ringo here for his checkups. They were inseparable. Ringo adored her. A shadow of grief crossed her face. It's heartbreaking for both of them. He spent the rest of the night at the clinic, dozing fitfully in a hard plastic chair, waking every hour to check on Ringo. The dog lay motionless in his kennel, hooked up to a myriad of machines, his chest rising and falling with the help of the ventilator. Each breath was a fragile victory. By dawn, the initial shock had begun to wear off, replaced by a relentless determination. Jake couldn't shake the image of Ringo's terrified eyes, or the whispered rumors about Amelia Hayes. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that Ringo was a key, a living, breathing link to Amelia's fate. He called his captain, laying out the grim details of the gas station incident and his strong suspicion that it was tied to Amelia. Captain Evans, a gruff but fair man, listened patiently. "Riley, I understand your concern, but officially, Detective Hayes is on personal leave. There's no active investigation into foul play, and burning a dog, as horrific as it is, doesn't automatically connect to a missing persons case without more evidence. But Captain, it's Ringo Jakeprest," his voice tight with frustration. "Amelia's dog. Found like that, it's too much of a coincidence. Coincidence or not. Jake, protocol is protocol." Captain Evans sighed. "I'll put in a request for the detective division to look into the animal cruelty aspect. But unless you have something concrete linking this to Amelia's case, my hands are tied. You know that. Stay focused on your patrol duties." The conversation left Jake cold. He understood the bureaucracy, the need for concrete evidence, but his gut screamed otherwise. He couldn't wait for official channels, not when Amelia might be in danger. And Ringo had suffered so terribly. He would investigate on his own, off the books if he had to. His first stop after leaving the clinic was Amelia's apartment. He knew her address from the precinct database. It was a modest, well-kept building in a quieter part of Havenwood. He knocked, but there was no answer. The blinds were drawn, a thin film of dust on the doorknob. It looked untouched, abandoned. He spoke to Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who lived across the hall. A nosy but well-meaning neighbor. "Oh, Detective Hayes," she said, wringing her hands. Such a lovely young woman, always so polite. And her dog, Ringo. Such a good boy. Never barked. She paused, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "She left in such a hurry. Just a few bags. Looked very stressed. Didn't even say goodbye. Said she had a family emergency. But it didn't feel right." "Officer?" "Not right at all." Jake thanked her, the information confirming his suspicion that Amelia's departure was anything but routine. A family emergency. Highly unlikely for someone who usually confided in her neighbors. He then visited the precinct, discreetly making his way to Amelia's empty desk. It was clean, almost too clean. No stray papers, no personal effects. It had been cleared out as if she was never coming back. But Amelia was meticulous, known for her comprehensive notes. She wouldn't just leave without a trace. He chatted with Detective Miller, a colleague of Amelia's who was working on a different case. "Yeah, Amelia just vanished," Miller said, shrugging. "Heard she was close to a breakthrough on that Thorne case. The big real estate guy. But then, poof, gone. Everyone just assumed she took off. Maybe the pressure got to her." "Thorne case," Jake prodded, trying to sound casual. "Marcus Thorne. Big shot developer. Lots of projects around town. Always gets his permits pushed through faster than anyone else." Amelia was sniffing around some irregularities in his finances. Land acquisitions, nothing concrete. Just a gut feeling she had. Miller paused, rubbing his chin. She was obsessed with finding the missing link. The ghost in the machine, as she called it. Said Ringo was her best confidant? Jake's heart gave a jolt. Ringo? Of course. Amelia trusted Ringo. If she had been documenting her findings, she might have hidden them somewhere only she, or Ringo, could access. He returned to Amelia's apartment building that afternoon, this time with a more focused intent. He found a sympathetic building manager who, after some gentle persuasion and a subtle hint about a potential gas leak investigation, led him into Amelia's apartment. The apartment was indeed spotless, almost unnervingly so. No signs of struggle, no overturned furniture. It was as if someone had meticulously cleaned it, erasing any trace of Amelia's life. But Jake knew Amelia's reputation for being thorough. for anticipating dangers. He moved slowly through the rooms, his eyes scanning every surface, every shadow, searching for anything out of place. He started in her office, a small room dominated by a large, antique wooden desk. The drawers were empty, wiped clean. He ran his hand along the underside of the desk, feeling for loose panels or hidden catches. Nothing. He checked the books on the shelves, the framed photos, even the potted plants. Then, he noticed it. A slight discoloration on the bottom right leg of the desk. Near the floor, almost imperceptible, like a faint smudge of dust that had been wiped away repeatedly. He knelt down, examining it closer. It was a small, almost invisible scuff, as if something had been regularly pushed or nudged against it. His eyes darted to the space beneath the desk. His heart pounded. He ran his hand along the bottom edge of the desk drawer, pushing firmly. There was a faint click, a hidden compartment, with a surge of anticipation. Jake pulled a small, thin panel from the underside of the drawer. Inside, tucked away, was a single, folded piece of paper. His fingers trembled as he pulled it out. It was a cryptic note, written in Amelia's neat, precise hand. It read, "They tried to silence the truth. Ringo knows. The fire hides the lies. Follow the echo." The words were chilling. The fire hides the lies? Ringo, found engulfed in flames. It couldn't be a coincidence. This was Amelia's final, desperate attempt to leave a trail, to ensure the truth came out. And Ringo, in his ordeal, had unknowingly become the key. Jake carefully folded the note and tucked it into his own pocket. The pieces were starting to connect, forming a dark, sinister puzzle. Marcus Thorne, corruption, Amelia's disappearance, and now Ringo, a survivor of a horrifying arson. Carrying a silent testimony in his injured body, he left the apartment, the note a burning weight in his pocket, a spark igniting a fire of resolve within him. He wouldn't be constrained by protocol. He wouldn't let Amelia be forgotten. And he would find out who had done this to Ringo. And why. The game had changed, and Jake Riley was ready to play. The drive back to the veterinary clinic felt different, charged with a new urgency. The cryptic note from Amelia had solidified Jake's suspicions, transforming a horrific act of animal cruelty into a chilling piece of a larger, more sinister puzzle. The fire hides the lies, follow the echo. And Ringo was the living, breathing echo. He found Dr. Reed checking on Ringo. The dog was still on the ventilator, but his breathing, though machine-assisted, seemed a little more stable. Dr. Reed looked up, a faint smile on her face. "He's doing remarkably well. All things considered, a true fighter. His vitals are improving." "That's good to hear," Jake said. His gaze fixed on Ringo's still form. He hesitated, then made a decision. He pulled Amelia's note from his pocket. "Dr. Reed, I need to show you something, and I need your honest, professional opinion on a theory." He handed her the note. Dr. Reed read it, her brow furrowing with each word. "Ringo, no. The fire hides the lies." She looked up at Jake, her eyes filled with a mixture of shock and understanding. "You think Amelia meant Ringo actually knows something beyond just being a victim?" "I do," Jake affirmed, his voice low. "Amelia trusted him implicitly. Detective Miller, her colleague, said she even called him her best confidant. What if Ringo saw something? What if he heard something he was with her all the time?" He gestured towards the dog. "He survived that inferno. He was left for dead because he was a witness." Dr. Reed walked over to Ringo's kennel, observing the dog thoughtfully. "It's unconventional. Officer Riley, animals don't usually process events like humans do, especially not traumatic ones. But canines are different. They're highly intelligent, incredibly perceptive, and their bond with their handlers is extraordinary. They learn to interpret human cues, vocalizations, even intentions. She paused, then continued. And trauma, especially severe trauma, can manifest in strange ways. Some animals shut down, others become hypersensitive. It's possible, highly speculative, but possible, that Ringo's memory of events, even sensory ones, smells, sounds, voices, could be triggered. He might react to something or someone he associates with the attack or with Amelia's last moments. So he could be a witness. Jake reiterated, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Not in words, but in reactions, in behavior. In a way. Yes. Dr. Reed conceded. But it would take a very specific approach. A trained hand. I know just the person. Dr. Lena Hansen. She's an animal behaviorist, specializes in trauma recovery for working dogs. She has some very unorthodox but often incredibly effective methods. She might be able to help us. Jake felt a surge of renewed purpose. Can you contact her as soon as possible? Within hours. Dr. Lena Hansen arrived at the clinic. She was a striking woman, sharp-eyed and with a quiet, observant demeanor that immediately put Jake at ease. She spent a long time observing Ringo, not just his physical state, but his subtle twitching. The way his ears occasionally flickered even in sedation. He's deeply traumatized, she stated, her voice calm and authoritative, but also incredibly resilient. There's a spark in him that refuses to be extinguished. Dr. Reed mentioned the circumstances of his injury and your theory about his connection to Detective Hayes' disappearance. Jake explained everything again, laying out Amelia's note, the whispers about Marcus Thorne, and his growing conviction that Ringo held the key. Dr. Hansen listened intently, occasionally nodding. It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. She finally said, working dogs, especially canines, form a cognitive map of their world based on their handler. They associate places, sounds, smells, and voices with their handler's emotional state and missions. If Detective Hayes was in distress, or if she was actively investigating someone dangerous, Ringo would have absorbed that information. And a traumatic event like this, it would be seared into his memory on a primal level. She outlined her approach. We start with building trust, reinforcing his sense of safety. Then, as he recovers, we'll gently introduce stimuli, sounds, voices, even specific objects or scents. We'll monitor his physiological responses, heart rate, breathing, even subtle body language. A change in his posture, a growl, a whimper, even a shift in his gaze. Could be a clue. It's about letting him tell his story, in his own way, over the next few days. Jake divided his time between his patrol shifts and the veterinary clinic. Ringo's recovery was slow but steady. He was weaned off the ventilator, his own ragged breaths slowly gaining strength. The burns were healing, though they would leave deep. Disfiguring scars? Dr. Hansen began her work, a meticulous and patient process. She spent hours simply sitting with Ringo, speaking in a calm, soothing voice, letting him get used to her presence. When Ringo was strong enough, she started introducing controlled stimuli. She played recordings of various voices, generic police chatter, then specific voices from the precinct, including that of Detective Miller and later, voices from local news reports. Ringo reacted minimally to most. A twitch of an ear, a flicker of a tail, but then Dr. Hansen played a recording of a local town hall meeting where Marcus Thorne, the real estate developer, was speaking. The moment Thorne's smooth, confident voice filled the room, Ringo's ears flattened. A low, almost imperceptible growl rumbled deep in his chest. His uninjured leg twitched, and he shifted uncomfortably in his kennel. His gaze fixed on the speaker. Jake felt a jolt. That's him. he whispered. Thorn, Dr. Hansen made a note. A significant response. Increased heart rate, clear agitation. Let's try it again. She replayed the recording. The same reaction. Stronger this time. Next. She introduced scents. She had collected samples from various locations relevant to Amelia's investigation. The gas station. Amelia's apartment. And even a faint sample from a document related to Thorne's company that Jake had discreetly obtained from the precinct's evidence locker when the scent of the gas station was presented. Ringo whined, a deep, mournful sound, and tried to shy away. His body tensed, and his breathing became rapid. It was a clear, unmistakable sign of trauma, but it was the scent from the document. A faint, metallic odor mixed with something else. Something subtly sweet and synthetic. That elicited the strongest reaction. Ringo let out a sharp bark, a sound of pure anger, and lunged forward, trying to bite at the scent container. His body stiffened, and he began to pace agitatedly in his kennel. He knows that smell, Dr. Hansen concluded, her eyes wide with understanding. He associates it with danger, with the attack. It's powerful. This isn't just a general aversion, it's a direct, targeted reaction. Jake had a hunch. He remembered a faint, almost imperceptible smell at the gas station. Beneath the smoke and gasoline, something that had reminded him of industrial cleaner, but with an odd, cloying sweetness. Could it be a specific chemical used in some of Thorne's construction materials? Or perhaps a unique disinfectant used at one of his properties? It was a long shot, but worth investigating. He spent his off-duty hours delving deeper into Marcus Thorne. The man was a titan in Havenwood's real estate market, his name synonymous with sleek new developments and controversial land acquisitions. Amelia's notes, though cryptic, hinted at a complex web of shell corporations and offshore accounts. She had been tracking large sums of money moving through these companies, money that seemed to originate from illicit activities and was being laundered through Thorne's development projects. He discovered that one of Thorne's most recent acquisitions was a large, abandoned industrial warehouse on the far side of town, an old textile mill that had been dormant for decades. The official reason for the purchase was future development, but no permits had been filed, no construction started. It was a holding place, a ghost property. Jake had a chilling thought. If Amelia was investigating Thorne, and Ringo was her confidant, perhaps the warehouse was a place Ringo had been, a place connected to Amelia's last known activities, and perhaps connected to the strange, synthetic smell that so agitated Ringo. He decided to visit the warehouse. It was risky, going off book, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Ringo was guiding him, piece by agonizing piece, towards the truth. He had a witness, a silent, furry, courageous witness who had already paid a terrible price, and Jake was determined to make sure that price wasn't paid in vain. The abandoned warehouse loomed under the gray Havenwood sky, a monolithic testament to faded industry. Its corrugated metal walls, rust-streaked and grimy, seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Broken windows, like vacant eyes, stared out from under a corrugated roof that sagged in places. This wasn't just an empty building, it felt like a tomb. Jake approached in his personal vehicle, an unmarked SUV, blending into the industrial landscape. He'd changed out of his uniform, opting for dark, nondescript clothing, a baseball cap pulled low to obscure his face. He wasn't here as Officer Riley, he was here as a man pursuing a truth the official channels wouldn't touch. The access road leading to the warehouse was choked with weeds and littered with rusted debris. As he drove closer, the distinct, faintly sweet and synthetic smell that had so agitated Ringo at the clinic grew stronger. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was undeniably unique. A chemical scent he couldn't quite place, mixed with something else like old oil and damp concrete. His gut clenched. This was it. This was the echo Amelia's note had hinted at. He parked his SUV behind a cluster of dense, overgrown bushes, well out of sight of the main road. The silence here was profound, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the mournful creak of the old building in the wind. He grabbed his tactical flashlight and a compact, but powerful, sidearm, just in case. His police-issued weapon was back in his patrol car. This was his own, for off-the-books contingencies, carefully. He made his way toward a side door that appeared to be slightly ajar. Rust had corroded the old hinges, leaving a gap that invited entry. He pushed the door open slowly, the groan of metal echoing eerily in the vast emptiness. The air inside was cold, stale, and thick with dust. The strange synthetic scent even more potent. His flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing a cavernous interior, old machinery, draped in cobwebs, stood like silent sentinels. Shadows stretched and danced, distorting familiar shapes into monstrous forms. Jake moved cautiously, his boots crunching on loose gravel and bits of broken concrete. Every creak, every distant drip of water, sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He was looking for anything. Signs of recent activity. Amelia's notes. Anything that could connect her to this place. He scanned the walls, the floor, the abandoned workbenches. The place felt utterly desolate, as if no one had set foot inside for years. Yet the distinct smell told him otherwise, as he ventured deeper. A faint light, a mere sliver, caught his eye from a far corner of the warehouse. It was too dim to be a window, too steady to be sunlight filtering through a crack. He moved towards it, his heart quickening. The light emanated from a small, almost hidden room, built into the corner of the vast space. The door was made of reinforced steel with a digital keypad beside it. This wasn't part of the original textile mill. This was new. This was the urban redevelopment Marcus Thorne had alluded to. Perhaps a secure, secret space within his abandoned property. Jake approached the keypad, examining it. No lights, no power. He ran his hand over the door, feeling the cold, solid steel. It was locked tight. Frustration gnawed at him. He was so close, yet separated by a seemingly impenetrable barrier. He circled the small room, searching for any other entry point. Any weakness? He noticed a faint, almost invisible seam in the corrugated metal wall, a section that didn't quite match the others. He pressed against it, then pulled. And with a soft click, a small camouflage service panel swung open. Inside, a tangle of wires and a small, dusty circuit board were visible. A power conduit, recently installed, led away from the panel, disappearing into the floor. This room had its own, independent power source. Probably a generator, and within the panel, he saw a small red reset button and a series of unmarked switches. He took a deep breath. This was a gamble. He could trip an alarm, alert whoever was connected to this place. But he had to know what was inside. He flipped a switch. Nothing. He tried another. Still nothing. Then, he located a small, barely visible diagram etched into the back of the panel, showing a sequence. He pressed the red button, then flipped two specific switches in quick succession. Following the sequence, there was a soft whirring sound from within the steel door, a faint click of a lock disengaging. A green light blinked on the keypad. The door was unlocked. Jake paused, his hand on the cold steel. He drew his sidearm. The familiar weight a reassurance. He pushed the door open slowly, cautiously, his flashlight beam piercing the darkness within. The room was surprisingly modern, clean, and soundproofed. It contained a single sturdy table in the center and a few folding chairs. On the table, neatly stacked, were binders, files, and a laptop, all covered with a thin sheet of plastic. The strange, sweet, synthetic smell was strongest here, clinging to everything. It smelled like a specific industrial-grade cleaner, designed to eliminate biological traces. Perhaps his gaze fell upon the binders. Labels, handwritten in Amelia's distinctive script. Immediately caught his eye: Thorn Corp, Illegal Act, Project Ghost, Money Flow, Overseas. He picked up the top binder, his heart hammering. This was it. This was Amelia's missing investigation, her painstaking work, the evidence she had been gathering against Marcus Thorne. As he flipped through the pages, the horrifying truth began to unravel. Amelia had uncovered a sophisticated money laundering scheme, deeply embedded within Thorne's real estate empire. He wasn't just buying up properties, he was using them as fronts to clean vast sums of dirty money, funneled from drug cartels and illegal arms deals. The urban redevelopment was a facade, a way to move the money and acquire valuable assets at rock-bottom prices, often by intimidating owners into selling. But the most shocking discovery was not just the financial fraud. Amelia had found evidence of coercion, intimidation, and even a few suspicious accidents that had befallen property owners who refused to sell to Thorne. She had linked him to a network of enforcers, ex-military types, who ensured compliance. She was about to expose him, and she had meticulously documented every step. He found a detailed timeline of her investigation, leading up to the day she disappeared. Her last entry, dated the day before she vanished, was chilling. Closing in on the silent partner, the one who truly pulls the strings. Meeting tomorrow? Anonymous tip about a data drop. Ringo will be with me if I don't report back by midnight. Ringo holds the key. Warehouse on Route 9. The word sent a jolt of icy dread through him. Warehouse on Route 9. This was the place. Amelia had been here. Ringo had been here. And she had known the danger. She had left her testament, her final warning, here. Tucked away in the secret room, he continued to sift through the files, finding detailed maps with marked locations, other abandoned properties Thorne had acquired, or was planning to. One map, circled in red, showed the abandoned gas station where Ringo was found. It was a chilling realization. They hadn't just tried to burn Ringo to destroy evidence. They had done it at a location Amelia had identified as significant. It was a macabre taunt, a twisted message. Suddenly, a faint, metallic clang echoed from the main warehouse area. Jake froze, his senses on high alert. Someone else was here. He hadn't heard a vehicle approach. He extinguished his flashlight, plunging the room into darkness, and pressed himself against the steel door. Listening intently, footsteps, heavy and deliberate, were moving through the vast space outside. There were at least 2, maybe 3. He heard muffled voices, too low to discern words, but the tone was menacing. He knew he was in deep trouble. He had walked right into their lair. The thought of Amelia, potentially still captive, or worse, spurred him to action. He couldn't just hide. He had to think, to plan. He quickly scanned the room. No other exits. His eyes fell on the laptop on the table. If he could access it, there might be more. Unencrypted information. He moved silently. Opening the laptop, it was password protected. He tried a few common K9-related passwords, even Amelia's badge number. Nothing. The footsteps grew closer, stopping just outside the reinforced door. He heard a faint click, the sound of a digital keypad being manipulated. They knew the code. They were coming in. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. He had to move. He scanned the room frantically. A small air vent cover near the ceiling, too small to escape. But maybe the whirring sound of the lock disengaging began again. The green light on the keypad flashed. They were about to enter. He had seconds. He looked at the laptop one last time. A surge of desperation. Ringo. What would Ringo do? Just then, as the door began to creak open, Jake heard a muffled, familiar sound from the main warehouse. A low, agitated whine, then a sharp, angry bark. Ringo? He couldn't be here. Could he? Had Dr. Reed followed him? It was a reckless, desperate gamble. But it was a diversion. He knew it. "He's here, the cop!" A gruff voice roared from outside the door. Jake knew he had to act. He grabbed the most crucial binders, the ones detailing Thorne's silent partner, and the list of accidents. He didn't have time for the laptop. He slipped the binders into his bag, then sprinted towards the service panel he'd used to open the door, just as the steel door burst open. The steel door to the secret room burst open, revealing 3 hulking figures silhouetted against the dim light of the main warehouse. Their faces were obscured by the shadows, but their bulk and aggressive posture spoke volumes. Jake recognized the type enforcers, the kind Marcus Thorne would employ to convince stubborn property owners. "There he is," one of them growled, his voice deep and gravelly. Jake didn't waste a second. He knew he was outmatched in a direct confrontation, especially armed only with his personal sidearm against what looked like a professional crew. His only advantage was surprise and his knowledge of the room's hidden entry. He slammed the service panel shut, locking it in place with a sharp click. It wouldn't hold them for long, but it bought him precious seconds. As the first man lunged forward, Jake rolled sideways, grabbing one of the empty binders from the table and flinging it hard at the man's face. It wasn't meant to injure, just to momentarily blind. The man grunted, momentarily thrown off balance. Jake used the distraction, sprinting towards the far wall, where a small, rickety ladder led up to an overhead catwalk. It was a long shot, but it was his only option. "Get him!" another voice roared. Bullets whizzed past, slamming into the steel doorframe with deafening pings. Jake ducked, scrambling up the ladder, his muscles burning. He heard the metallic thump as one of the enforcers tried to kick down the service panel he had just closed. It wouldn't be long. He reached the catwalk, a narrow, precarious walkway stretching across the vast expanse of the warehouse. Below him, the men were already struggling to open the secret room's panel, their shouts echoing in the cavernous space. Jake didn't look back. He ran, his footsteps clanging loudly on the metal grating. The sound amplified in the echoing emptiness. He kept low, using the darkness and the old machinery below as cover, trying to melt into the shadows. He knew they would follow him. The question was, how fast? And did they have eyes on him from the outside? He heard a frustrated shout from below. "He's on the catwalk, get him!" One of the men, surprisingly agile for his size, was already halfway up another ladder on the opposite side of the warehouse, cutting off Jake's path to the far exit. Jake was trapped, caught between 2 ascending threats. He looked down. The ground was a dizzying distance below, littered with rusted metal and concrete debris. A fall would be fatal. He scanned the labyrinth of old machinery, searching for an escape, any kind of advantage. His eyes landed on a heavy chain hoist, dangling from a motorized rail that ran along the ceiling. Used in the old factory to lift heavy loads, it was suspended just above his head, slightly ahead of him. It was a desperate idea, but he had no other choice. As the first enforcer reached the catwalk behind him, Jake jumped. Grabbing the chain hoist, the sudden weight jolted his arms, sending a searing pain through his shoulders. He swung, the motorized rail creaking under his weight, carrying him slowly, agonizingly slowly, across the expanse of the warehouse, away from his pursuers. "What the hell?" a voice bellowed from below. The men scrambled, one trying to jump for him, missing by inches. The other was already racing along the catwalk, trying to intercept him. Jake gritted his teeth, holding on for dear life, his muscles screaming. The chain hoist was moving too slowly. He was a sitting duck. He looked ahead, beyond the reach of the catwalk. The motorized rail led towards a large, boarded-up loading bay door. If he could reach it, perhaps he could find a way out. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the warehouse. A bullet ricocheted off the metal ceiling just above his head, showering him with sparks. They were shooting at him. He was exposed, dangling in midair. He had to make it. He had to. He thought of Ringo, recovering in the clinic, a silent testament to Amelia's fight. He thought of Amelia, potentially still alive, somewhere, waiting to be rescued. He couldn't fail now. He focused on the end of the rail, on the loading bay door. It seemed impossibly far away. His grip was weakening, his hands slick with sweat. He was losing strength. Fast, just as he felt his fingers begin to slip. He heard it again. From below, from the main floor of the warehouse. A furious, guttural growl, and then a series of sharp, authoritative barks. Ringo, it had to be. The growls and barks were followed by shouts of surprise and alarm from the enforcers. "What the? Get off me, you damn mutt!" Jake risked a glance down. In the dim light, he could make out a blur of movement on the warehouse floor. Ringo, his bandaged body moving with a surprising, almost desperate speed, had burst into the warehouse, launching himself at the legs of the enforcers. He was a whirlwind of fury, a four-legged avenger, fueled by an instinct to protect and perhaps to avenge Dr. Reed. She must have followed him, knowing he was walking into danger. Or maybe Ringo, sensing Jake's urgency, had simply broken free and followed his scent. It was a reckless, magnificent act of loyalty. The diversion was exactly what Jake needed. The enforcers, caught off guard by the sudden, ferocious attack, stumbled and swore, momentarily forgetting about Jake. One of them let out a yelp of pain as Ringo's teeth found his ankle. Jake used the precious seconds. He swung his legs, gaining momentum, then released his grip on the chain hoist. Launching himself forward, he landed hard on the dusty concrete floor, rolling to absorb the impact. A searing pain shooting up his leg. He ignored it. Scrambling to his feet, he was near the large loading bay door. It was bolted from the inside, a heavy iron bar securing it. He ran towards it, his heart pounding. The men were still preoccupied with Ringo, who was barking fiercely, keeping them at bay. He fumbled with the bolts, his fingers clumsy from the adrenaline and the earlier burns. The metal was stiff, rusted. He pulled, grunting with effort. The bolts groaned, protesting. "He's at the door, get the dog, then get him," one of the enforcers yelled. Regaining his composure, Jake heard the heavy footsteps approaching. Closer now. He wouldn't have much time. He gave a final, desperate tug on the bolts with a loud clunk. They slid free. He shoved the massive door open, revealing the gray light of the outside world. He heard the click of a safety being disengaged behind him, the chilling sound of a gun being readied. He didn't look back. He burst out of the warehouse, gasping for breath, limping from his injured leg. He dove behind the nearest large dumpster, shielding himself. He heard the thud of heavy boots as the enforcers emerged from the warehouse. Scanning the area. "He couldn't have gone far," one of them shouted. Jake peeked over the edge of the dumpster. The men were looking in the wrong direction. Sweeping the area near the road, Ringo was nowhere to be seen, but Jake could hear faint, furious barking from inside the warehouse. The dog was still fighting, creating a diversion. He was buying Jake time. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. Anne dialed Captain Evans. "Captain, it's Riley. I'm at the old Thorn warehouse on Route 9. I found Amelia Hayes' investigation files. She uncovered a massive money laundering operation, and she's been abducted. There are armed men here, Thorn's enforcers. They just tried to kill me. And Ringo's here. He's injured, but he's fighting them off. I need immediate backup." Armed response. Tactical. "This isn't a drill. Captain, this is a full-blown hostage situation and a criminal enterprise." Captain Evans's voice, initially gruff, sharpened with alarm. "Riley, what the hell are you doing there?" But then, He heard the urgency, the sheer terror in Jake's voice, and the distant sounds of barking and muffled shouts from the phone. Understood. Riley, stay put. Do not engage. Help is on the way. ETA 5 minutes, maybe less. Jake clicked off the phone, his heart pounding. 5 minutes. It felt like an eternity. He pressed himself against the cold metal of the dumpster, listening to the shouts and the frantic barks from within the warehouse. Ringo. He was still fighting. His mind raced. He had to get Ringo out of there. He had to make sure the dog, who had already suffered so much, didn't pay the ultimate price. He had to ensure that Ringo's sacrifice wasn't in vain. He had to make sure justice found its mark. The 5 minutes Captain Evans promised felt like an eternity, each second stretching taut with the agonizing sounds emanating from the warehouse. Jake gripped his sidearm, pressed against the cold metal of the dumpster, his ears straining, trying to decipher the chaos within. Ringo's barks, sharp and furious, were interspersed with angry shouts and the occasional thud of a struggle. The dog was still fighting, a desperate, valiant stand. Jake knew he couldn't stay put. Ringo was buying him time, but at what cost he couldn't let the dog, who had already endured so much, face these brutes alone? He had to create a bigger distraction, something to draw the enforcers out, or at least away from Ringo. Until backup arrived, he scanned the immediate area around the dumpster. To his left, a rusted, discarded fuel drum, likely empty, lay on its side, beyond it. A small, overgrown utility shed, probably housing an old generator or discarded tools. To his right, a stack of wooden pallets, waterlogged and decaying, nothing he could use as a weapon against armed men, but a distraction. His eyes fell on a loose piece of corrugated metal sheeting leaning against the warehouse wall. Near the loading bay door, it was large and unwieldy, but relatively light. An idea, reckless but potentially effective. Sparked in his mind, he quickly, but silently, moved towards the metal sheet, keeping low, his movements fluid despite the throbbing in his leg. The shouts inside the warehouse seemed to intensify, Ringo's barks becoming more strained. Jake knew he was running out of time. He grabbed the edge of the metal sheet. It was larger than he anticipated, sharp edges biting into his already sore hands. He ignored the pain with a surge of adrenaline. He pulled it away from the wall, dragging it with a loud, grating scrappy across the concrete. The sound was ear-splitting, cutting through the general din like a siren. "What was that?" a voice roared from inside the warehouse. "He's still out here." Jake didn't wait. He shoved the large sheet, sending it clattering noisily against another wall, creating a cacophony of metallic sounds that echoed through the desolate yard. He then sprinted, limping heavily, towards the utility shed, hoping to draw their attention away from the loading bay entrance. Away from Ringo. As he reached the flimsy shed door, he heard the heavy thud of boots emerging from the warehouse. There he is by the shed. He ripped open the shed door, diving inside just as a bullet whizzed past his head, embedding itself in the wooden frame. The shed was small, cramped, filled with the stale smell of oil and rust. Old gardening tools, rusty shovels, and a few empty oil cans littered the dirt floor. No weapons, no escape. He was cornered. He pressed himself against the far wall, heart hammering against his ribs, listening to the heavy footsteps approaching the shed. He could hear their angry, guttural voices. Closer now. "Come out! Cop, it's over!" one of them yelled, his voice laced with menace. "You got nowhere to go. We just want the files." Riley once another snarled, "Give them up, and maybe we let the dog live." Jake knew it was a lie. They had tried to burn Ringo alive, they wouldn't hesitate to finish him off. He had to keep them talking, keep them distracted. He clutched his sidearm, aiming it at the door. He was outnumbered, but he wouldn't go down without a fight. Suddenly, from behind him, he heard a faint whirring sound. He risked a glance over his shoulder in the dim light. He saw it, an old, rusty gasoline generator. tucked away in the corner, partially hidden by cobwebs, and next to it, a small red jerry can. Fuel. A desperate, dangerous idea formed in his mind. He couldn't take them all on, but he could create an inferno of his own, an echo of the one Ringo had survived. "You want the files," Jake shouted back, his voice strained but defiant. "You'll have to come in and get them." He heard a frustrated curse. "He's just stalling," lighted up. He heard a metallic clink from outside, the sound of a gun being cocked. He knew they were about to spray the shed with bullets, with a rapid, practiced motion. Jake reached for the jerrycan. It was half full. He quickly unscrewed the cap, the pungent smell of gasoline filling the small space. He then located the generator's fuel tank, quickly poured the gasoline from the jerrycan into it. He fumbled for the generator's pull cord, his hands shaking. This was insane, but it was his only chance to create enough chaos for a counterattack, or at least a chance to escape. Last chance, cop. Just as they were about to open fire, Jake pulled the cord with all his might. The old generator coughed, sputtered, and then with a rough, rattling roar, it sprang to life, spewing a cloud of black smoke and the acrid smell of burnt fuel. The shed vibrated violently. The sudden noise and the burst of smoke caught the enforcers by surprise. "What the hell?" Jake didn't wait. He used the cover of the smoke and noise. He quickly grabbed a discarded crowbar from the corner of the shed, its rusty weight a comforting solidity in his hand. He threw open the shed door, not to flee, but to launch a desperate counterattack. The first enforcer, eyes wide with confusion, was directly in front of the door. Jake swung the crowbar in a desperate arc. Aiming for his gun hand, there was a sickening crack as the crowbar connected. The man yelled, his weapon clattering to the ground. Jake didn't hesitate. He lunged past the stunned enforcer, retrieving the dropped weapon, a heavy caliber pistol. Now he was armed. Truly armed. The other two enforcers, recovering from the surprise, turned their weapons on him, but before they could fire, a black and tan blur shot out from the side of the warehouse, a furious, low growl rumbling in its chest. Ringo, the brave K9, despite his injuries, launched himself at the legs of the nearest enforcer, tackling him to the ground in a desperate, last-ditch effort. The man screamed as Ringo's teeth found his arm, holding on with a tenacity born of courage and loyalty. The second enforcer, distracted by his struggling partner, hesitated for a split second. That was all Jake needed. He raised the stolen pistol and fired a warning shot into the air, the loud bang echoing through the desolate yard. "Police, drop your weapons! Hands on your heads!" Jake roared, his voice filled with an authority and fury that had been building since he found Ringo in the flames. He kept the pistol aimed steadily at the remaining enforcer. The man, momentarily stunned by the chaos and the sight of an armed, furious cop, froze. His eyes darted from Jake, to his struggling partners, to the roaring generator. He had underestimated this cop. Just then, the wail of sirens, faint at first, then rapidly growing louder, pierced the air. Blue and red lights began to flash in the distance, cutting through the gray afternoon. Backup had arrived. The enforcer's bravado melted away, replaced by a look of panic. He dropped his weapon and slowly raised his hands. All right, I surrender." Jake kept his gun steady. "Get on the ground, face down now." The man slowly knelt, then lay prone on the ground. Ringo, still growling, released the first enforcer, who lay whimpering, clutching his arm. The third enforcer, bleeding and disoriented, also slowly raised his hands, seeing the flashing lights approaching rapidly. Moments later, a swarm of patrol cars, unmarked SUVs, and a tactical response unit converged on the warehouse. Captain Evans was among the first out, his face a mixture of relief and stern disapproval. "Riley." "What in God's name were you thinking?" Captain Evans yelled, striding towards him. Then he saw the files in Jake's hand, the injured Ringo, and the three apprehended enforcers. His expression shifted, a grudging respect replacing the anger. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Captain," Jake replied. Holstering the stolen weapon, he knelt beside Ringo, stroking the dog's head. "Ringo's not, but he saved my life, and he led me to these." He held up Amelia's binders. Amelia Hayes was abducted. These files contain evidence of a massive money laundering operation run by Marcus Thorne, and he's connected to her disappearance. Captain Evans took the binders, his eyes widening as he skimmed the contents. The official story of Amelia's personal leave shattered in his hands. "Get an ambulance for Ringo and send in the forensics team. This whole place is a crime scene." He barked to his officers, his voice laced with shock and a renewed sense of urgency, as paramedics attended to Ringo. Jake watched, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief and admiration for the brave dog. Ringo, exhausted but defiant, met Jake's gaze, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them. He had been through hell, but he had fought, and he had won. The enforcers were cuffed and taken into custody. As they were being led away, one of them, the one Jake had hit with the crowbar, spat at him. "You won't find her, cop." "She's long gone. Thorne's too powerful." Jake just stared him down, his eyes cold and unwavering. "We found Ringo. We found the truth, and we'll find her. You can count on it." The full weight of what he had uncovered and the dangerous path he had just walked finally settled over him. He had plunged headfirst into a criminal conspiracy far larger and more dangerous than he had imagined. But he wasn't alone anymore. He had Captain Evans's full support now, and he had Ringo, a loyal, resilient, and utterly fearless partner in the silent pursuit of justice. The Thorne warehouse, once a silent monument to decay, now buzzed with the controlled chaos of a police operation. Crime scene tape, stark yellow against the gray concrete, crisscrossed the entrances. Forensic specialists in white suits moved methodically, their cameras flashing, meticulously documenting every detail of Marcus Thorne's secret lair. Uniformed officers secured the perimeter, while detectives, led by a newly galvanized Captain Evans, began the arduous task of sifting through the evidence Jake had uncovered. Jake stood by his patrol car, leaning heavily against the fender, the adrenaline finally beginning to ebb, leaving him with a profound ache in his leg and the lingering phantom sensation of burning hands. Paramedics had checked him over, cleaning his superficial burns and bandaging a nasty scrape on his knee from his jump off the catwalk. He refused further medical attention. His focus was still on Ringo. The K9, after being examined by the on-site paramedics, had been carefully loaded into a specialized animal ambulance, lights flashing, and whisked back to Dr. Reed's clinic. Jake had watched him go, a silent promise exchanged between them. Ringo had fought his own battles, and now he deserved to heal. Captain Evans approached him, a grim expression on his face. "Riley, you're a damn fool, but a hero. Those files, Amelia Hayes was onto something huge, and you just blew the lid off it." He gestured to the warehouse. Thorne's entire operation, money laundering, coercion, possibly even murder. "We've found enough in there to put him away for life, and we're mounting a full-scale search for Amelia, immediately." Jake nodded, a weary relief washing over him. "Good. She deserves justice. Ringo deserves justice." "Indeed," Captain Evans said, his gaze softening as he looked towards the direction the ambulance had taken. "That dog? Incredible. He's going to get the best care available." "Riley, we owe him that much." The next few days were a whirlwind for Jake. He spent hours being debriefed by detectives from major crimes, recounting every detail of his discovery, the encounter at the warehouse, and the information from Amelia's files. He detailed Ringo's reactions to Thorne's voice and the mysterious chemical scent. Providing Dr. Hansen's contact information, the new leads ignited a massive investigation, reaching far beyond Havenwood. News of the discovery, initially suppressed by the police to protect the ongoing investigation, eventually leaked. Prominent developer Marcus Thorne, arrested in vast money laundering scheme, screamed headlines. The story of Officer Jake Riley and the miraculous K9 Ringo, found nearly burned to death, became a local sensation. The public, horrified by the brutality inflicted on Ringo, rallied, showering the clinic with donations for his care and sending messages of support. Jake returned to his patrol duties, but his focus had irrevocably shifted. The files in Ringo's silent testimony had placed him at the heart of the investigation. He was now working closely with the detective division, specifically with Detective Sarah Jenkins, a sharp, no-nonsense investigator known for her meticulous approach. "Riley, your hunch about Ringo was spot on," Detective Jenkins admitted during one of their first meetings. She had just returned from observing one of Dr. Hansen's sessions with Ringo. Dr. Hansen used a specialized scent kit. We managed to isolate the unique chemical signature from the warehouse, a specific industrial solvent used by a company Thorne owns, which also manufactures some of his construction materials. When Ringo smelled it, his reaction was undeniable. He went ballistic. It's the closest thing to a direct witness testimony we'll ever get from an animal. And his reaction to Thorne's voice, Jake asked, equally compelling. Jenkins confirmed, he exhibits clear signs of fear and aggression. It strongly suggests Thorne, or someone associated with him, was directly involved in Amelia's abduction and Ringo's attempted murder. The most pressing question remained, where was Amelia Hayes Thorne? A man of chilling composure, remained silent, denying everything, even with the overwhelming evidence stacking against him. His enforcers, after being interrogated, also remained tight-lipped. Their loyalty or fear of Thorne apparently absolute. The police launched a full-scale search, using the information from Amelia's files, particularly the maps of Thorne's other properties and potential hideouts. Jake found himself on the search teams often, his knowledge of the files and Ringo's behavioral cues proving invaluable. They searched abandoned buildings, remote cabins, even a private airfield Thorne owned. But Amelia was nowhere to be found. Days turned into a week. Hope, initially high, began to wane. Jake visited Ringo at the clinic every day. The dog was healing remarkably well, his physical wounds closing, though the scars would be a permanent reminder. Dr. Reed and Dr. Hansen marveled at his resilience. He was still subdued, but his eyes held more life now, more recognition. He greeted Jake with a soft nudge of his head, a faint thump of his tail, a quiet sign of his growing bond and trust. During one visit, Dr. Hansen was working with Ringo on desensitization exercises, trying to mitigate his trauma response to loud noises. She had a small, portable speaker, playing a variety of urban sounds. Suddenly, a snippet of a news report came on, featuring an old, archived interview with a local politician, Councilman Davies, who had been a vocal supporter of Thorne's controversial projects. As Davies's voice, a smooth, unctuous baritone, filled the room. Ringo's ears perked up, his head cocked to the side. He didn't growl, didn't show fear or aggression. Instead, he whined softly, a sound of almost confusion. And then he began to pace in his kennel, a restless energy building in him. He nudged his nose at the speaker, then looked at Jake, then back at the speaker, as if trying to communicate something. Jake noticed the subtle yet distinct shift in Ringo's behavior. This wasn't the same reaction he had to Thorne. This was different. "Lena," he said, "play that last bit again. The one with Davies." Dr. Hansen rewound the recording as Councilman Davies's voice played again. Ringo's pacing intensified, He started pawing at the kennel door, his whine growing more insistent. He then let out a sharp, single bark and nudged his nose towards a laminated map of Havenwood that Dr. Hansen used in her sessions, which was lying on a nearby table. His paw tapped directly on a section of the map depicting the city's central district. Near the old municipal courthouse, Jake's mind raced. Davies. The courthouse. What could be the connection? Davies was a Thorn ally, but not directly implicated in the money laundering, at least not yet. Amelia's files hadn't explicitly mentioned Davies beyond his public support for Thorn's projects. He's trying to tell us something, Jake murmured. Walking to the map, he pointed to the courthouse. Here, Davies. Ringo barked again, a more emphatic sound, and continued to paw at the map. Then looked meaningfully at Jake, Dr. Hansen observed, her eyes gleaming with professional interest. His response is different. Not fear, not aggression, more like urgency and recognition, as if this voice or this place is connected to a specific event or person, but not necessarily a threat. Jake remembered Amelia's note. Follow the echo. Thorn was the fire, the direct threat. But perhaps Davies was an echo, a subtle link, an indirect player. He immediately called Detective Jenkins. Sarah, I'm at the clinic. Ringo just had a very specific reaction to Councilman Davies' voice. Not fear, but agitation. And he pointed to the courthouse on a map. Jenkins was skeptical. Davies, he's a public figure. No direct links to Thorn's criminal activities. Just political support. This could be a coincidence. Riley, it's not, Jake insisted, his voice firm. Ringo's reactions are too precise. It's a different kind of alert. Amelia's note said, follow the echo. Thorn is the inferno. Davies might be the echo. A subtle clue she left, knowing Ringo would react. Jenkins, though cautious, respected Jake's instincts, especially after his success with the warehouse. All right, Riley, it's a long shot, but I'll look into any recent activity involving Davies and the courthouse. Any public events, closed-door meetings, anything unusual. Jake hung up, his gaze falling back on Ringo. The dog had settled, but his eyes were still alert, watching Jake, as if waiting for him to understand. The courthouse. Davies. There was something there, something Amelia had known, something that had been obscured by the larger, more obvious threat of Thorn. The truth was often hidden in plain sight, a quiet echo amidst the roar of the inferno. Detective Jenkins, true to her word, started digging into Councilman Davies. Her initial skepticism was quickly chipped away by the sheer oddity of some of his recent activities. It wasn't overt criminality like Thorn's, but a series of subtle, almost imperceptible deviations from his usual meticulously planned public schedule. He's been making unscheduled visits to the municipal courthouse after hours. Jenkins reported to Jake a day later, her voice tinged with surprise. Claiming late-night administrative reviews or document processing, but his staff seemed genuinely confused by it. He's always been very by the book with his public appearances. And the courthouse. Jake pressed, what exactly would he be doing there late at night? That's the thing, Jenkins replied, tapping a pen against her notepad. The municipal courthouse isn't just where trials happen. It houses all manner of city records, property deeds, zoning permits, historical archives, even old tax records. It's a goldmine of information if you know what you're looking for. Jake's mind instantly connected the dots. Property deeds, zoning permits. Marcus Thorne's entire operation revolved around illegal land acquisition and development. If Thorne had a silent partner pulling strings, someone with inside knowledge of city records, Councilman Davies was a prime candidate. He had access, political power, and a long-standing public alliance with Thorne. It could be a ledger, Jake mused aloud. A hidden record of the illicit transactions, maybe even where Amelia buried her ghost in the machine. It's a strong possibility. Jenkins agreed. But getting access to those archives after hours would be incredibly difficult, even for a councilman. There are security measures. Night staff, he'd need help, or a very specific kind of key. They decided to stake out the courthouse. Jake, still technically on light duty for his injuries, volunteered immediately. He felt a burning impatience, a need to move, to act. Ringo's reactions, his subtle pointers, had ignited a new urgency in him. He knew they were close. That night, Jake and Detective Jenkins, along with a few other plainclothes officers, positioned themselves in unmarked cars around the courthouse. The grand old building stood silent and imposing under the glow of sparse streetlights, its stone facade casting long, ghostly shadows. It was just after midnight. Hours crawled by in a tense, silent vigil. The city was quiet, save for the occasional passing car or the distant wail of a siren. Jake watched the main entrance, his eyes scanning every shadow. Just before 2 a.m., a sleek, black sedan, nondescript and without official markings, pulled up to a side entrance of the courthouse, a rarely used service door. The car parked discreetly, its engine idling. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see inside. Jake exchanged a look with Jenkins. That's not Davies' official car, and he usually drives himself. A figure emerged from the driver's side of the sedan. It was a man, tall and slender, his movements precise and almost unnaturally smooth. He was dressed in dark, expensive clothes. He carried a small, leather briefcase. As he turned slightly, the streetlights glinted off the side of his face, revealing a sharp, aquiline nose and a thin, cruel mouth. Jake's blood ran cold. It wasn't Davies, it was Marcus Thorne. A wave of disbelief, then blinding fury, washed over Jake. Thorne was supposed to be in jail, awaiting trial, held without bail. How could he be here? Free. Moving with such casual impunity, the enforcer's words echoed in his mind. Thorne's too powerful. He immediately radioed Jenkins. It's Thorne, Marcus Thorne. He's at the side entrance. Jenkins's voice crackled with shock. Thorne. That's impossible. He's supposed to be locked down. Well, he's not. He just got out of that black sedan, Jake retorted, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. Before they could react further, the side door of the courthouse opened just a crack, revealing the cautious face of Councilman Davies. He looked nervous, agitated. He quickly ushered Thorne inside, then shut the door. The black sedan remained parked, engines still idling. He was just released on an emergency bond. A judge's order just came through this evening, citing new evidence in his defense. Jenkins exclaimed into the comms, clearly reading updates from her phone. Damn it, he must have pulled some strings. Corrupted a judge. That's why he was so confident. He's not just a developer, Jake muttered, his jaw tight. He's got connections, deep inside the system. That's the silent partner Amelia was after. Davies is just a pawn. The situation had escalated dramatically. Thorne, free and clearly still operating, was now inside the courthouse with a corrupt councilman. They couldn't storm the building immediately. They needed to understand what Thorne was after, what leverage he still held, and most importantly, where Amelia might be. Jake remembered Amelia's note. The fire hides the lies. Ringo's trauma, his reactions to Thorne and Davies, made chilling sense now. They weren't just trying to destroy evidence, they were trying to eliminate the human element. Amelia and the animal witness. Ringo. Who held the truth? He looked at the black sedan, still idling by the curb. It was a getaway car. Thorne wasn't planning on staying long. We need to go in, Jake stated, his voice calm, but with an underlying steel. He's consolidating evidence, trying to destroy something or retrieve something. We can't wait for a tactical team. They'll be gone. Jenkins hesitated for a moment, then nodded. You're right. Let's move. We go in quiet. No sirens, no lights, minimal force. We don't want to alert anyone inside or outside beyond Thorne's immediate crew. They exited their vehicles, moving swiftly and silently towards the side entrance Thorne had used. Jenkins tried the door. It was locked. Davies must have locked it behind them, she whispered. Jake looked around. Old buildings often had service tunnels, basement entrances. He remembered reading an old article about the courthouse's historic architecture, mentioning an extensive network of sub-basements and old record storage. There might be an old access tunnel, he suggested, pointing to a rusty grate set into the ground near the back of the building. It used to lead to the old boiler room. They pried open the heavy grate, revealing a narrow, dark shaft. It smelled of damp earth and forgotten things. Jake, being the more agile, volunteered to go first. He descended into the darkness, his flashlight beam cutting through the inky black. The tunnel was cramped and dusty. Forcing them to crouch, it eventually opened into a vast, cavernous basement filled with shelves of dusty legal tomes, forgotten filing cabinets, and the eerie silence of a place undisturbed for decades. The air was heavy, humid, and smelled of old paper and mildew, and they moved stealthily through the labyrinthine stacks, their flashlights casting dancing shadows on the walls. They could hear faint voices now, echoing from somewhere deeper within the basement. Thorne and Davies, they crept closer. Following the sounds, the voices grew clearer, emanating from a large, steel-doored vault at the very heart of the archives. It was a secure, temperature-controlled room, likely where the most sensitive and valuable documents were stored. Jake and Jenkins pressed themselves against a tall shelf. Peering around the corner, the heavy vault door stood ajar. Inside, illuminated by a single, bare bulb, were Thorne and Davies. Thorne, calm and menacing, stood before an old, wooden desk, sifting through a stack of thick, leather-bound ledgers. Davies hovered nervously beside him, wringing his hands. "Are you sure this is everything?" Councilman Thorne's voice, a chillingly calm baritone, echoed slightly. "Every last transaction, every property deed signed over, every penny funneled through the Havenwood Renewal Fund." Davies gulped. "Yes, Mr. Thorne? Everyone, it's all here. The original ledgers." Amelia Hayes was very thorough. She copied everything before she went to the police. I intercepted her copies, burned them as you instructed. But she also had a microfiche of all these originals hidden away. It took me weeks to find it in her apartment after you handled her. I brought it to you here so you could verify. The confession hung heavy in the air, a chilling confirmation of Jake's worst fears. Amelia was alive. Thorne had her, and Councilman Davies, the seemingly innocuous politician, was his accomplice, a willing participant in the web of corruption and violence. The words I intercepted her copies, burned them as you instructed, but she also had a microfiche of all these originals hidden away. After you handled her echoed with a sinister finality. Jake's grip tightened on his sidearm, a white-knuckled tremor running through his injured hand. He exchanged a grim look with Detective Jenkins. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. The stakes had just been raised immeasurably. They weren't just after evidence anymore, they were after a life. Inside the vault, Thorne, oblivious to their presence, picked up a small, rectangular box from the desk. "Excellent. Councilman, with this microfiche, we can identify all her original findings and make sure they never see the light of day. And as for the originals, fire is such an efficient cleaner. Isn't it?" He gestured vaguely at the ledgers. "A little accident. A faulty wire in the archives. No one would ever suspect." Davies swallowed hard, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. "And Amelia, you promised she'd be dealt with quietly." Thorne gave a cruel, thin smile. "Rest assured, Councilman, she is being dealt with? She's in a secure location, awaiting her final disposition. She's become a liability, a very vocal one, even in her confinement. His voice was utterly devoid of remorse, a chilling testament to his depravity. Jake felt a surge of cold fury. Secure location. Final disposition. Thorne wasn't just silencing Amelia, he was planning to murder her. And Davies, the worm, was enabling it. He nudged Jenkins, subtly signaling for her to get ready. They couldn't wait. Every second they wasted was another second Amelia was closer to a horrific fate. Suddenly, a faint click echoed from somewhere deeper in the archives. A sound barely audible over Thorne's calm, cruel voice. It was the distinct sound of a distant, old security alarm, tripped by an unnoticed presence. Thorne and Davies froze, their heads snapping up. "What was that?" Davies hissed, his face paling. Thorne's eyes narrowed, his composure momentarily cracking. "Perimeter breach. Someone else is here." He moved quickly, heading for the vault door. "Come on, Davies. We need to go. Now." Jake and Jenkins knew their window of opportunity was closing. As Thorne moved past the open vault door, Jake burst from behind the shelves, his sidearm raised. "Police Marcus Thorne. Councilman Davies, freeze hands where I can see them." Jake's voice boomed, echoing through the cavernous basement. Thorne spun around, his eyes widening in a rare moment of genuine shock. His gaze flickered from Jake to Jenkins, who had emerged behind him, her weapon also raised. Davies whimpered, his face a mask of terror. "Riley!" Thorne snarled, regaining his composure with alarming speed, a venomous glare in his eyes. "Always the pesky, interfering dog handler. You never know when to stay in your lane. It's my lane when you burn an innocent animal alive." "Thorne," Jake retorted, his voice low and dangerous. "And when you abduct an officer, it's my lane when justice is being perverted." Thorne let out a short, humorless laugh. "Justice? Quaint notion. You think you can stop me? I own this city. Detective, judges, councilmen, even some of your own department. You're out of your depth." He slowly reached into his suit jacket. "Don't even think about it," Jenkins warned, her finger tightening on the trigger. Thorne, however, wasn't reaching for a weapon. He pulled out a small, sleek device, a remote detonator. His thumb hovered over a single, large red button. "You really think you've won?" Thorne sneered, his eyes gleaming with a chilling madness. "If I go down, everything goes down. This entire archive, these ledgers, and any lingering traces of Amelia Hayes. This building will be nothing but ash and rubble. And you and your little detective friend will be buried under it." Davies gasped, horrified. "Marcus, no. The judge—" "Silence." "You fool," Thorne snapped, his eyes fixed on Jake. "You want justice, Riley. This is my justice, a clean slate, and a lesson for anyone who dares to cross me." The cold dread that had prickled Jake's skin returned. But this time, it was laced with a desperate fear for Amelia, and for the irreplaceable evidence in this vault. Thorne wasn't bluffing. The man was a monster, capable of anything. "Don't be a fool, Thorne," Jenkins urged, trying to buy time. "You'll never get away with this. There are officers outside, more on the way." Thorne merely smiled, a chilling, triumphant grin. "By the time they get down here, it will be too late. The explosives are already in place. A few strategically placed charges in the load-bearing walls. A complete collapse." He lifted his thumb slightly from the button. A silent threat. Jake's mind raced. He had to act. He had to stop Thorne. He remembered the generator in the shed, the chaos it had created. He needed another distraction, something to give him an opening. Then he heard it, a faint, distant whine, almost a whimper, echoing from the main entrance of the courthouse, now filled with the distant sounds of police activity. And then, clearer, more urgent, Ringo's distinctive bark. Ringo! How had he gotten here? Had he followed the scent trail or had Dr. Reed, knowing the danger, brought him? It was reckless, but utterly Ringo. The thought gave Jake a spark of hope. You forgot one thing, Thorn, Jake said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. You didn't get rid of all the witnesses. Thorn frowned, confused. Then, from the distant main entrance of the courthouse, a flurry of barks erupted, louder now, interspersed with shouts of surprise from the officers entering the building. And then, a low, furious growl, chillingly familiar. Ringo, having escaped his ambulance or been released by a concerned Dr. Reed, had followed Jake. He was here, and he was making a grand, chaotic entrance. Thorn's eyes flickered, a momentary flicker of concern in them. The dog, the one he thought he'd eradicated. That split second of distraction was all Jake needed. With a sudden, explosive burst of movement, Jake lunged forward, throwing himself towards Thorn. It was a gamble, a desperate, last-ditch effort. Jenkins, reacting instantly, fired a shot towards Thorn's hand, aiming for the detonator. The bullet whizzed past, narrowly missing Thorn's fingers, embedding itself in the wall behind him. Thorn cried out, a sound of surprise and pain, but his thumb, in a reflex, slammed down on the detonator. A chilling silence descended, broken only by the rapid thumping of Jake's heart. And then, a faint, almost imperceptible thrum vibrated through the floor. The explosives had been triggered, but the vault, a centuries-old structure designed to withstand fire and theft, remained stubbornly intact. The vibrations were subtle, not the earth-shattering tremor of an imminent collapse. Thorn stared at the detonator in his hand, then at the vault, then back at Jake. A look of bewildered fury on his face. It should have worked. Jake, now directly in front of Thorn, didn't hesitate. He brought his sidearm up, pressing the barrel against Thorn's temple. It looks like your power has finally run out, Thorn. And your luck. Just then, the outer vault door, which had been left ajar, suddenly slammed shut with a deafening crash. Sealing them all inside, dust rained down from the ceiling. Davies screamed, his voice high-pitched with terror. We're trapped! From the other side of the heavy vault door. They heard furious scratching and frantic barks, muffled but unmistakable. Ringo. He had managed to follow them down into the basement, and had somehow, perhaps in his agitated state, nudged the heavy door shut. The irony was not lost on Jake. The dog, whom Thorn had tried to burn alive, had just inadvertently trapped him in his own vault of secrets. Jenkins, recovering quickly, had Davies pinned against a bookshelf, cuffing him. You pathetic little man. You helped abduct Amelia Hayes, you monster. Thorn, however, was still struggling, his eyes wide with a manic desperation. He lunged at Jake, trying to disarm him. But Jake, fueled by adrenaline and a righteous fury, held his ground. He wrestled Thorn to the floor, pinning him down. The weight of his own grief and Max's memory giving him unexpected strength. Where is she? Thorn! Jake roared, his voice raw. Where is Amelia? Thorn just laughed, a broken, desperate sound. You'll never find her, Riley. Even if I told you, it would be too late. She's in a place no one will ever look. My final secret. Outside the vault. The frantic barking of Ringo turned into a desperate whine, followed by the muffled shouts of police officers. They were trying to get in. Captain Evans. We're in the vault. Thorn and Davies are apprehended. But Thorn triggered explosives, and he says Amelia is still alive. In a secure location, Jake yelled, hoping his voice would carry through the thick door. The sound of drills and heavy equipment could be heard from outside. As the police worked to breach the vault, the air inside the vault felt thick, claustrophobic. Jake held Thorn down, the man's struggles growing weaker. You don't understand. Riley? Thorne whispered, his voice hoarse, a chilling glint in his eyes. The real power. It's not what you see. It's who you don't see. But his words were cut short as the vault door finally groaned, then swung open with a screech of metal, revealing a swarm of uniformed officers. Tactical gear glinting in the light. Captain Evans, his face grim, rushed in, followed by more detectives. Ringo, limping but defiant, pushed past the officers, making a beeline for Jake. He nudged his head against Jake's hand, then let out a low growl, looking directly at Thorne. A silent, powerful condemnation. Thorne was quickly cuffed and led away, still muttering curses. Davies, a sniveling wreck, was also taken into custody. The microfiche, Thorne's last piece of incriminating evidence, was secured by Jenkins as the chaos began to settle. Jake knelt beside Ringo, stroking his fur. You did good, boy. You did so good. Ringo looked up at him, then nudged his head towards the old ledgers on the desk. They contained the full extent of Thorne's crimes. The truth that the fire at the gas station had tried to hide, and with Thorne's capture, and Davies's confession. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place, but the most crucial piece was still missing. Amelia. Thorne's final. Chilling words echoed in Jake's mind. She's in a place no one will ever look. The countdown had begun. They had secured the evidence. They had captured the monsters. Now, they had to find Amelia before it was too late. The triumphant chaos of Thorne and Davies's apprehension slowly gave way to a renewed, more desperate urgency. Captain Evans, his face etched with grim determination, immediately put every available resource onto finding Amelia. The microfiche, now secured as evidence, held the key to dismantling Thorne's entire corrupt network. But it was Amelia's life that hung in the balance. He said a secure location. Jake repeated to Jenkins. Poring over a digital map of Havenwood, they were in a makeshift command center set up at the courthouse. A hive of activity with detectives hunched over laptops, making calls, chasing leads. A place no one would ever look. Jenkins pointed to Thorne's properties. Highlighted in red on the map. We've searched all the obvious ones. The abandoned mill, his various construction sites, even his personal residence and his yacht. Nothing. It has to be somewhere less conspicuous. Somewhere he feels absolutely safe and undisturbed. Jake paced, his mind racing through every detail of Thorne's profile. The man was arrogant, meticulous, and utterly convinced of his own untouchability. He wouldn't hide Amelia in some random rented safe house. It had to be a place with personal significance. A place he could control absolutely. A place that wouldn't draw attention. What about properties he didn't officially own, but had strong ties to, Jake suggested, shell corporations, front businesses, or even places that are publicly owned, but he had undue influence over. Jenkins nodded. We're cross-referencing all his known business associates, political allies, and even his family properties. It's a needle in a haystack, but we're throwing everything at it. Suddenly, a detective at a nearby workstation called out, Captain, we just got an anonymous Tip A call to the precinct's Crime Stoppers line. Claimed to have seen a woman matching Detective Hayes' description being taken into a disused section of the old Havenwood Psychiatric Hospital about 3 weeks ago. Jake's head snapped up. The Havenwood Psychiatric Hospital. It was a sprawling, Gothic-style complex on the edge of town. Mostly abandoned for decades, but a small, newer wing still functioned as a mental health facility. The older, main building had a dark history, a reputation for being haunted. It was the last place anyone would think to look. Especially for an official police search. It was perfectly in plain sight by being so out of the way. A place people instinctively avoided. The old asylum, Jenkins muttered. A grim look on her face. That place is a maze and largely condemned. It's too perfect for Thorne. Dark, isolated, easy to get lost in. Captain Evans barked orders. Assemble a tactical team, Jenkins. Riley, you're with them. Move fast and move quiet. That place is a death trap, even without Thorne's goons. And get Dr. Reed and Dr. Hansen on the line. I want Ringo prepped and ready. He's proven himself to be the best tracker we have. Within minutes. Jake was in a tactical response vehicle, speeding towards the hospital. Ringo, miraculously cleared for duty by Dr. Reed with Dr. Hansen accompanying him. Monitoring his health, was in a specialized K-9 unit van behind them. His burns were still heavily bandaged, but his eyes were bright, focused, and his tail thumped with a low, steady rhythm. He was ready as they approached the dilapidated hospital. The setting sun cast long, ominous shadows across its imposing brick facade. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth, decay, and something else. A faint, almost metallic smell that Jake instinctively recognized as similar to the one that agitated Ringo at the clinic. A subtle chemical undertone. Thorne's signature. The tactical team, led by a stern, efficient Lieutenant Miller, established a perimeter. All right, team, this place is massive. Miller briefed them. Old building, likely unstable. Proceed with extreme caution. We're looking for Detective Amelia Hayes. Assume she's held against her will. Assume there are armed guards. Ringo will lead the primary search team. Jake, now paired with Ringo, felt a surge of nervous energy mixed with grim resolve. He adjusted his tactical vest, checked his weapon. Ringo looked up at him, a soft whine escaping his throat. Jake knelt, stroking the dog's head. Okay, boy, this is it. Find Amelia. Ringo, despite his injuries, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. His ears perked, his nose twitching, already scanning the air for scents. Dr. Hansen, walking beside him, kept a close eye on his vitals. They breached a decaying service entrance on the side of the old building. A heavy steel door that groaned ominously as it swung open. The interior was a chilling tableau of institutional decay, peeling paint, rusted gurneys, and the lingering scent of disinfectant and despair filled the air. Dust motes danced in the beams of their flashlights. Ringo immediately took the lead, his nose to the ground, pulling Jake gently but purposefully through the labyrinthine corridors. He ignored the main, more obvious paths, instead leading them down forgotten service tunnels, through old kitchens, and into areas that looked like they hadn't seen a living soul in decades. He seemed to be following a very specific scent trail, his pace steady and unwavering, as they delved deeper into the hospital's forgotten wings. The air grew colder, the silence more oppressive. Ringo's pace quickened, his tail giving a low thump, a sign of heightened interest. They passed old patient rooms, their beds stripped bare, some with rusty restraint still bolted to the frames. A grim reminder of the building's past. Suddenly, Ringo stopped short, his body tensing. He let out a low growl, his hackles rising. He was pointing his nose towards a section of wall, a seemingly solid, brick barrier. But the growl was different, not just aggressive, but also a hint of agitation, a sense of proximity to his handler, to, "What is it, boy?" Jake whispered, shining his flashlight on the wall. He noticed subtle discolorations in the brickwork, almost imperceptible. I think it was too regular, too deliberate for an old, decaying wall. Lieutenant Miller, observing Ringo's reaction, approached. "Looks like a false wall, possibly," one of the tactical officers. An explosives expert quickly moved forward, scanning the wall with a specialized device. "Affirmative, Lieutenant. There's a hollow space behind here and some very recent structural work. This isn't original construction." He worked quickly, setting small, precise charges. "Stand back," he warned. A muffled thump vibrated through the air as the charges detonated. Dust billowed, and a section of the brick wall swung inward, revealing a dark, narrow passage beyond. The air that rushed out was stale, thick, and laced with a faint, sweet, synthetic chemical smell. The same one from the warehouse. Thorne's scent. Ringo, without hesitation, plunged into the newly revealed passage. Jake right behind him. The passage led to a small, hidden room, strangely modern and soundproofed. A stark contrast to the decay outside. It was sparsely furnished a cot, a small table, a single chair, and on the cot, slumped and pale, but unmistakably alive, was Detective Amelia Hayes. She was weak, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. But she looked up as Ringo burst into the room. A flicker of recognition, then a surge of overwhelming relief washed over her face. "Ringo," she whispered, her voice hoarse, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Ringo, you came back for me." Ringo, despite his injuries, whined with pure joy, nudging his head against her hand, his tail thumping a frantic rhythm against the cot. He licked her face, a torrent of silent, canine relief. Jake felt a profound wave of emotion, relief, joy, and a deep, aching tenderness. He had done it. They had found her. All of Ringo's suffering, all of his pain, had led them to this moment. "Amelia," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion as he rushed to her side, followed by Lieutenant Miller and Dr. Hanson. "You're safe now. We got you." Amelia, her eyes still fixed on Ringo, managed a weak smile. "I knew he'd find me. I knew he wouldn't give up. He's the smartest, bravest dog I know." She looked at Jake, a grateful tear tracing a path down her cheek. "Thank you, Officer Riley. Thank you for not giving up on him. Or on me." As paramedics rushed in to assess Amelia, Jake knelt beside Ringo, stroking his head. The dog leaned into his touch, a soft rumble of contentment in his chest. Ringo had faced an inferno, survived betrayal, and carried the silent burden of a terrible secret. He had led them through the echoes of a vast conspiracy, enduring his own suffering to bring justice and rescue to his beloved handler. He truly was a hero, a testament to the unwavering power of loyalty and the unbreakable bond between a canine and its partner. The mission was complete. Justice, indeed, had found its mark. The immediate aftermath at the Havenwood Psychiatric Hospital was a controlled frenzy. Paramedics, their movements swift and precise, assessed Amelia Hayes. She was severely dehydrated, malnourished, and emotionally traumatized, but remarkably, physically unharmed beyond the effects of prolonged captivity. The relief that washed over Jake as he saw her conscious, speaking and stroking Ringo, was immense. A balm to the raw ache in his soul. Ringo, exhausted from his heroic efforts, finally collapsed at Amelia's feet, a soft whine escaping him before he drifted into a deep, well-deserved sleep. Dr. Hanson and Dr. Reed immediately began to attend to him, ensuring his injuries weren't aggravated by his recent exertions. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Miller and his tactical team secured the hidden room and the surrounding areas. Forensics quickly moved in, meticulously collecting evidence traces of Thorne's unique chemical solvent, food wrappers, makeshift restraints, and surveillance equipment, all irrefutable proof of Amelia's illegal detention. Amelia, once stabilized and given some water, was carefully transferred to a secure hospital for comprehensive medical and psychological evaluation. Before she left, she gripped Jake's hand, her eyes filled with a profound gratitude. "Thank you, Jake. You and Ringo, you saved my life. I knew someone would come. I just never imagined it would be him." She glanced at the sleeping Ringo. He never gave up. Jake simply nodded, unable to articulate the whirlwind of emotions within him. Get some rest, Amelia. We'll get Thorne for this, for everything. Captain Evans arrived shortly after, his face a mixture of triumph and weariness. He surveyed the scene, then clapped Jake on the shoulder. Riley, you pulled off a miracle. An officer found. A corrupt empire brought down. This is going to be big. National news. He paused, then added, and that dog? Ringo will be a legend. The following days were a blur of investigations, arrests, and media frenzy. Marcus Thorne, despite his attempts at defiance, crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The microfiche found in the courthouse vault, combined with Amelia's first-hand testimony and the overwhelming physical evidence from the hidden room at the asylum, painted a damning picture. It wasn't just money laundering, it was extortion, intimidation, unlawful detention, and conspiracy to commit murder. Thorne's silent partner was revealed to be a network of corrupt officials, bribed judges, and influential business figures who had profited immensely from his illicit activities. Councilman Davies, seeing his world collapse, tried to cut a deal, spilling everything he knew about Thorne's operations and the names of his co-conspirators. His testimony, though self-serving, provided crucial corroboration, sealing Thorne's fate and unraveling the intricate web of corruption that had plagued Havenwood for years. The police force, initially tight-lipped, eventually released a carefully curated statement about the heroic efforts of Officer Jake Riley and K9 Ringo. Acknowledging the official narrative of Amelia's personal leave was a cover to protect the ongoing investigation. Public outcry against Thorne was immense, matched only by the outpouring of support and admiration for Jake and especially Ringo. Ringo's recovery became a focal point of public interest. News channels ran daily updates. Donations poured into Dr. Reed's clinic, far exceeding Ringo's medical costs. With the surplus earmarked for other K9 units and animal rescue organizations, he was slowly, painstakingly, healing. His burns were still a raw sight, but his spirit, though subdued by trauma, was clearly on the mend. He received countless visitors, officers, community members, even children who had drawn pictures for him. Jake spent as much time as possible at the clinic, a quiet presence by Ringo's side. He read him the letters and cards from well-wishers, spoke to him in soft tones, reminding him of his bravery, of the justice he had helped secure. The bond between them deepened with each passing day, an unspoken language of understanding and shared ordeal. Ringo would often rest his head on Jake's lap, a soft, contented sigh escaping him. One afternoon, a few weeks after Amelia's rescue, Jake was sitting by Ringo's kennel, gently stroking his uninjured ear. Ringo's bandages had been reduced, revealing the extent of his scarring, a stark, reddish-pink testament to the flames. He would always carry the marks. A hero's badge. Amelia, now discharged from the hospital and undergoing extensive debriefing with federal agents, walked into the clinic. She looked stronger, more like her old self, though the lingering shadows in her eyes spoke of the ordeal she had endured. She knelt beside Ringo, her voice soft. "Hey, boy, look at you. You're a celebrity," Ringo whined, a sound of pure joy, and nudged his head into her hand, his tail thumping a steady rhythm against the kennel floor. He licked her hand, a profound connection evident in every gesture. Amelia looked up at Jake. "I wanted to thank you properly. Jake, what you did, it was beyond courageous. You went against protocol. You risked everything. For Ringo, for me. You're a true hero. You would have done the same," Jake replied. Meeting her gaze, "Ringo was the one who led me. He saved us both." He paused, then asked, "How are you doing? Really?" Amelia sighed. "It's going to take time, but I'm alive. And Thorne is where he belongs. Justice feels satisfying. Thanks to you and to Ringo." She smiled faintly. I'm going to take some extended leave, get some therapy, process everything, and Ringo, I want him to come home with me. He's been through so much. He needs to heal in his own space. Jake felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. He understood. Ringo was her partner, her family. It was the right thing to do. But a part of him, the part that had formed an unexpected and profound bond with the brave K9, felt a quiet sadness. Ringo had filled the emptiness left by Max in a way he hadn't thought possible. Of course, Jake said, forcing a smile. He belongs with you. He's your partner. Amelia seemed to sense his internal struggle. Jake, she said softly, Ringo saved me. But you saved Ringo. You kept him alive when no one else would have dared. You fought for him, and because of that, he fought for me. He trusts you completely. He owes you his life. She paused, then continued, a thoughtful look on her face. I know how much Max meant to you, and I know you've been working solo since this past year. It's a long shot, and I haven't even cleared it with Captain Evans yet. But would you consider applying for a K9 partnership with Ringo when he's fully recovered? And if he's cleared for active duty again? Of course, we could be a team. All three of us. Jake stared at her, stunned. The offer was so unexpected, so generous. It took his breath away. A K9 partnership. With Ringo? The thought sent a surge of warmth through him, a feeling of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't a replacement for Max, but a new beginning, a testament to resilience, a shared future. Amelia, I don't know what to say. Jake stammered, his voice thick with emotion. Think about it, Amelia said, smiling. Ringo's loyalty is fierce, and he's already chosen you. In his own way, and I think I need a change of pace. Maybe a desk job for a while, or focusing on cold cases. I've had enough of going undercover for a bit. She gently scratched Ringo behind the ears. He'd be lucky to have you, and I think you'd be lucky to have him. She stood up. I'll talk to Captain Evans. See what we can make happen. But for now, just think about it. She gave Ringo one last pat, then nodded at Jake. A knowing, grateful look in her eyes. Before leaving the clinic, Jake sat there for a long time, watching Ringo, who had fallen back into a light doze, his head resting on his paws. The silence of the clinic was broken only by the soft beeping of medical equipment. A K9 partner. Ringo, the brave, scarred dog who had endured an inferno, held a terrible secret and led Jake to the truth. The dog who had, unknowingly, started Jake on his own path to healing, pulling him out of the shadows of his grief. He thought of Max, of the deep, irreplaceable bond they had shared. And then he looked at Ringo, at the new, quiet bond that had formed, forged in the fires of cruelty and the shared pursuit of justice. It wasn't a betrayal of Max's memory, it was a continuation of his legacy, a testament to the enduring loyalty of K9s and the healing power of connection. He wouldn't be replacing Max. He would be honoring him by giving another brave dog a second chance, a new purpose, a faint but undeniable. A smile touched Jake's lips. The emptiness in the passenger seat of his cruiser, the silence that had haunted him, might finally find its echo in the rhythmic thump of a K9's tail. He had found a new purpose, a new path forward, and it began with a scarred but resolute German shepherd, a true hero named Ringo. The proposal from Amelia, a quiet, almost tentative suggestion, resonated deeply within Jake. The idea of partnering with Ringo, this brave, scarred survivor, felt less like a new assignment and more like a natural continuation, a healing path. He spent the next few days in a thoughtful haze, the familiar hum of his solo patrol car now sounding just a little too empty. Too quiet. He visited Ringo every day, not just as an officer, but as a potential partner. He saw the subtle changes in the dog, the way Ringo would perk up at his voice, the soft, trusting gaze, the faint but steady thump of his tail when Jake approached. Ringo, in his own silent way, was mirroring Amelia's offer, extending a paw of unspoken invitation. Captain Evans, true to Amelia's word, called Jake into his office a few days later. Riley. Detective Hayes has made a rather unconventional request. She wants Ringo to be considered for K-9 duty again, and she wants you as his handler. Jake straightened, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. Captain, I'd be honored. Ringo is an extraordinary animal. He's got courage, loyalty, and an intelligence that's uncanny. And with Dr. Hansen's help. His trauma is being addressed. He'd be an asset to the force. Captain Evans leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. I won't lie. Riley? There are hurdles. His injuries are significant. The optics, a burned K-9 back on duty. It's unprecedented, but his heroics, the public's support for him, and the fact that he was instrumental in bringing down Thorne, it carries weight. He paused, his gaze fixed on Jake. And you, Riley, you've been through a lot. Lost Max, been working solo. You've proven your instincts are sharp. You went off book, and you delivered a major win for this department and for justice. He pulled a file from his desk. Dr. Reed has given a provisional clearance. Pending further rehabilitation, Dr. Hansen is confident Ringo can make a full psychological recovery. We'll put him through an accelerated recertification program. Focus on his strengths, but it'll be tough. Are you up for it? Yes, Captain, Jake replied, his voice firm, unwavering. I'm ready. Good, Captain Evans said, a rare smile touching his lips. I'll put in the request. It'll go up the chain. But I have a feeling this is one decision that might just bypass some red tape. Now, let's get Ringo back to fighting shape. The recertification program for Ringo began in earnest a few weeks later. It was rigorous, designed to push both dog and handler to their limits. Ensuring Ringo was mentally and physically prepared for the demands of police work, and that Jake was a suitable handler for a K-9 with a unique past. Under Dr. Hansen's supervision, Ringo's training incorporated specialized exercises to address any lingering trauma, loud noises, sudden movements, even specific scents associated with his ordeal were introduced in controlled environments, slowly desensitizing him. His intelligence was remarkable. He quickly relearned commands, sharpened his tracking skills, and demonstrated an uncanny ability to read Jake's intentions. Jake, for his part, found a renewed purpose in the training. He studied canine behavior, spent hours perfecting his commands, and worked tirelessly on building a new, profound connection with Ringo. He learned to read Ringo's subtle cues, the twitch of an ear, the shift of his weight, the unique tone of his whines and barks. It wasn't about replacing Max, it was about building a new partnership, honoring Max's memory by embracing a new chapter. Ringo's scars remained, a stark reminder of his past, but they no longer defined him. They were a testament to his resilience, a visible badge of courage. He moved with a renewed confidence, his gait strong despite the painful memories. During one particularly challenging tracking exercise, set in a dense urban environment with countless distracting scents, Ringo stumbled, his old burn wounds protesting. He whined, a sound of frustration and pain, and looked up at Jake. His eyes filled with a fleeting shadow of the trauma. Jake immediately knelt, putting an arm around him. Easy, boy, you're doing great. We can take a break. But Ringo shook his head, a determined glint in his eyes. He nudged his nose forward, then barked softly, urging Jake on. He was pushing through the pain, through the memory, Driven by an inherent desire to succeed, to serve, to work alongside his handler, Jake felt a lump in his throat. This dog. This truly extraordinary dog. All right, buddy. Let's do this, together. They completed the exercise. Ringo pushing himself to his limits, but never breaking. Their bond solidified, becoming an unbreakable unit, built on trust, respect, and shared adversity. Meanwhile, the trial of Marcus Thorne dominated national news. The evidence was overwhelming, and Thorne, once so arrogant and untouchable, was exposed as a ruthless criminal mastermind. Amelia Hayes, now recovering and serving as a key witness, delivered powerful, emotional testimony, detailing her abduction, her desperate search for the truth, and her unwavering belief in Ringo's ability to lead them to her. Her courage galvanized the public. Davies, the sniveling councilman, testified against Thorne in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony confirming Thorne's corruption and revealing the names of other high-ranking officials involved in the conspiracy. The unraveling of Thorne's network sent shockwaves through the city's political and business elite, leading to a cascade of further arrests and resignations. The courtroom, packed with media and concerned citizens, listened intently as the story unfolded. The image of the burned K9 left for dead became a potent symbol of Thorne's cruelty and the lengths to which he would go to silence the truth. Finally, after weeks of grueling testimony, the verdict came down, guilty, on all counts. Marcus Thorne, the man who believed himself above the law, was sentenced to multiple life terms. Without the possibility of parole, justice, swift and undeniable, had been served. The news was met with a collective sigh of relief and celebration in Havenwood. The corrupt web had been dismantled, the dark secrets brought into the light. The city could finally begin to heal. In the aftermath of the trial, Amelia Hayes, true to her word, accepted an administrative role within the detective division, focusing on cold cases and internal investigations. It was a quieter role, allowing her space to heal and rebuild. While still contributing to the force, she would visit Ringo regularly during his training, her presence a comforting reminder of their shared victory. Then came the day, Ringo's final K9 recertification. Jake stood proudly beside Ringo as the K9 passed every test with flying colors. His tracking was sharp, his obedience flawless, his bite work powerful and controlled. He was still carrying his scars, but they were now badges of honor, a testament to his unbreakable spirit. Captain Evans, presiding over the ceremony, announced the official reinstatement of K9 Ringo to active duty and his new permanent handler, Officer Jake Riley. The applause that erupted was deafening. Jake clipped the new, polished K9 badge onto Ringo's collar, the metal glinting in the sunlight. Ringo looked up at him, then nudged his head into Jake's hand, a soft whine of contentment escaping him. His tail gave a happy, rapid thump. It was a moment filled with profound emotion for Jake. He remembered the raw, agonizing image of Ringo in flames, the desperate race against time, the silent testimony that had unraveled a criminal empire. He remembered the emptiness left by Max, and the quiet grief that had shadowed his days. Now, standing beside Ringo, with the cheers of his colleagues and the community surrounding them, that emptiness was filled, not replaced, but transformed. Ringo was a new beginning, a testament to resilience, a symbol of hope. Jake looked at Ringo, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and a deep, abiding affection. "Ready to go back to work, partner?" he murmured. Ringo responded with a soft bark, then nudged Jake's hand again, a clear, unmistakable signal, always together. Their partnership was not just about catching criminals, it was about healing, about finding purpose after loss, and about the extraordinary, unbreakable bond between a human and an animal, forged in fire and secured by an unwavering pursuit of justice. The echo of the inferno had led them to a new beginning, a lasting bond, and a shared future in the service of truth. The conviction of Marcus Thorne sent a ripple of relief and vindication throughout Havenwood. The city, long held in the thrall of his unseen influence, could finally breathe again. The news channels, no longer constrained by the ongoing investigation, delved into every detail of the scandal, featuring daily reports on the continuing arrests of Thorne's co-conspirators. The image of the burned K-9 Ringo and his rescuer, Officer Jake Riley, became synonymous with the fight for justice, their story inspiring countless headlines and heartfelt tributes. For Jake, the return to active duty with Ringo was a profound shift. The familiar hum of his patrol car no longer felt empty. Instead, it was filled with the soft, rhythmic breathing of his new partner, a steady presence that brought a quiet comfort to his days. Ringo, now fully recovered save for his permanent scars, sat proudly in the K-9 cage, his eyes constantly scanning the streets, his ears perpetually alert. He was a sentinel, a silent guardian, and a constant reminder of the inferno they had both faced and conquered. Their first few weeks on patrol together were almost surreal. People recognized Ringo immediately, stopping their cars, waving from sidewalks, eager to offer a pat or a kind word. Children, especially, were drawn to the scarred hero, bringing him homemade treats and drawings. Jake, always a reserved man, found himself navigating this unexpected public adoration, often deflecting praise to Ringo. "He's the real hero," Jake would always say, a genuine pride in his voice. One evening, responding to a routine alarm call at a deserted warehouse on the industrial outskirts, Jake and Ringo experienced their first true operational test as a team. The building was dark, the silence heavy with the promise of unseen threats. As they moved through the vast echoing space, Ringo's instincts proved invaluable. He moved with a quiet confidence, his nose to the ground, his low, soft whines guiding Jake through the maze of abandoned machinery. Suddenly, Ringo tensed, his hackles rising, a low, guttural growl rumbling deep in his chest. He stopped, his gaze fixed on a shadowy corner. "What is it?" "Boy," Jake whispered, drawing his sidearm, his heart quickening. Ringo barked sharply, then lunged forward, disappearing into the darkness. Jake followed, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, revealing two figures attempting to hotwire a forklift. They froze, startled, as Ringo burst upon them, barking furiously. "Police, don't move," Jake commanded, his voice firm and authoritative. The suspects, caught completely off guard by the sudden appearance of the K-9, immediately surrendered. As Jake cuffed them, he looked at Ringo, who stood panting slightly, his tail giving a slow, triumphant thump. It was seamless. Their training, their bond, had paid off. Ringo was back, not just as a survivor, but as an effective, irreplaceable member of the force. Their partnership quickly became the stuff of legend within the Havenwood Police Department. Ringo's unique abilities, honed by his traumatic past and Dr. Hanson's specialized training, gave them an edge. His acute sense of smell could detect traces of accelerants or hidden caches of evidence where human officers would find nothing. His sensitivity to certain voices and scents, even those subtly altered by emotion or subterfuge, proved invaluable in interrogations or during tense standoffs. He wasn't just a dog, he was a living, breathing lie detector, a trauma-informed witness. Jake, in turn, found a profound healing in their work together. The ache of Max's absence never truly vanished, but it transformed. It became a quiet memory, a foundation upon which a new, equally powerful bond was built. Ringo didn't replace Max. He honored him, filling the space not with a copy, but with a new, unique presence. Jake learned to trust his instincts again, not just his own, but the silent, powerful cues Ringo provided. He felt complete, whole, in a way he hadn't since that terrible day a year ago. Amelia Hayes, meanwhile, made a steady and remarkable recovery after several months of therapy and debriefing. She accepted a promotion within the department, taking on a specialized role in the Internal Affairs Division, focusing on investigating corruption within the city and police force. Her experience with Thorne's network and her acute understanding of how power could be wielded illicitly made her uniquely qualified. She often collaborated with Jake and Ringo, their shared past creating an unbreakable professional trust. One afternoon, a few months after Thorne's conviction, Jake and Ringo were off duty, enjoying a rare quiet day at a local park. Ringo, leash off, was romping in the grass, his scarred fur glistening in the sunlight. Jake sat on a bench, watching him, a serene smile on his face. Amelia approached, a coffee in hand. She sat beside him. "He looks good, Jake. Really good." "He is," Jake affirmed, his gaze following Ringo. "Stronger every day, and he's an incredible partner." Amelia nodded. "He always was, but you gave him a reason to fight, a reason to heal. You saved him. Jake, when everyone else thought he was a lost cause, he saved me too," Jake admitted, his voice soft. "Pulled me out of a dark place after Max. Showed me that purpose, that connection, can be found again, even after loss." He looked at her. "And you, Amelia, how are you doing with everything?" She sighed, a deep, weary but hopeful sound. "Better. It's a process, but seeing Thorne locked away, seeing the changes happening in the city, it helps. And knowing Ringo is out there, making a difference, it brings a lot of peace. There's a certain poetry to it, isn't there?" The dog they tried to burn alive became the very force that brought them down. Jake smiled. "Justice. It always finds its way, eventually." "Yes," Amelia agreed, a thoughtful look in her eyes. "Sometimes it just needs a little help from a brave officer and an even braver K9. Their conversation drifted to their work, to the ongoing efforts to root out the remnants of Thorne's influence. The city was still recovering, but it was healing, slowly but surely. The corruption had been exposed, the shadows lifted, and at the heart of that transformation were the quiet, determined efforts of individuals like Jake and Amelia, and the undeniable courage of Ringo. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Jake looked at Ringo, who was now trotting happily towards them, a stick in his mouth. The scars on his fur were visible. Catching the fading light, they were no longer symbols of cruelty, but of survival, of resilience, and of an unbreakable bond forged in the most harrowing of circumstances. The inferno had tried to consume Ringo, but instead, it had ignited a chain of events that led to justice, to healing, and to a new beginning. Jake Riley, the grieving officer, had found his purpose again. Ringo, the tortured K9, had found a new partner, a new family, and a new life dedicated to protecting the very community that had once failed him. Together, they were an unstoppable force, a testament to the enduring power of loyalty, courage, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. The Havenwood Police Department held a special commendation ceremony a few months after Marcus Thorne's conviction. It wasn't just for Officer Jake Riley and K9 Ringo, but for Detective Amelia Hayes and all the officers and detectives who had tirelessly worked to unravel Thorne's web of corruption. The city mayor, flanked by Captain Evans and other dignitaries, stood before a packed auditorium, the air thick with anticipation and genuine gratitude. "Tonight, we honor true heroism," the mayor began, his voice resonating through the hall. Heroism that wasn't just about bravery in the face of danger, but about an unwavering commitment to justice. even when the odds seemed insurmountable. And at the heart of this extraordinary story is the unbreakable bond between a man and his canine partner. Jake stood on stage, Ringo proudly at his side, his new polished K9 badge gleaming on his collar. Ringo, fully recovered, bore his scars like a badge of honor, a testament to his incredible resilience. He occasionally nudged Jake's hand, a quiet reassurance of their connection, even amidst the public spectacle. When it was their turn, Captain Evans stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Jake and Ringo. "Officer Jake Riley, for your exceptional courage, your unwavering dedication, and your instrumental role in bringing to light a vast criminal enterprise, you are hereby awarded the Havenwood Police Department's Medal of Valor." Applause erupted as the mayor pinned the medal to Jake's uniform. Jake felt a lump in his throat. He accepted the medal, but his eyes were on Ringo, who gave a soft, happy whine, as if understanding the significance of the moment, and to K9 Ringo. Captain Evans continued, his voice thick with emotion, for his unimaginable bravery in the face of unspeakable cruelty, for his incredible loyalty, and for being the silent, living witness who led us to the truth and to Detective Hayes. He is awarded the Golden Paw of Courage, the highest honor a K9 can receive, as the mayor presented Ringo with a specially engraved, gleaming golden paw print plaque. Jake knelt, helping Ringo receive it. Ringo nudged the plaque with his nose, then looked up at Jake, his eyes shining with an almost human understanding. The crowd erupted in a standing ovation, tears in many eyes, a collective outpouring of admiration for the scarred hero. Amelia Hayes, her face radiant, came onto the stage to tumultuous applause as well, accepting a commendation for her courageous investigative work and unwavering spirit during her ordeal. She looked at Jake and Ringo, a knowing smile on her face. Their shared experience had forged an unshakable bond between them. After the ceremony, amidst the handshakes and flashes of cameras, Jake and Ringo were swarmed by well-wishers. Children reached out to pet Ringo, their faces full of awe. Reporters clamored for interviews, eager to hear the story from the perspective of the brave officer and his K9. Later that evening, back in the quiet sanctuary of his own home, Jake sat on the floor, Ringo's head resting on his lap. He gently ran his hand over Ringo's scarred fur, the rough texture a permanent reminder of the inferno. Ringo sighed, a sound of deep contentment, and leaned into Jake's touch. "You know, boy," Jake murmured, his voice soft. "You're quite the legend now. A bona fide hero." Ringo responded with a soft thump of his tail against the floor. His eyes half closed. Jake thought back to that night at the abandoned gas station. The smoke, the flames, the sheer horror of the scene, the profound emptiness in his own life after losing Max. He had been a man adrift, burdened by grief, simply going through the motions. Then Ringo, an innocent victim, a burning testament to evil, had literally stumbled into his life, igniting a spark of purpose, a fierce determination for justice. Ringo had been left for dead. A final sadistic attempt to erase the truth, but instead, the fire had illuminated it. Ringo, in his suffering and his resilience, had become the echo Amelia had hoped for, leading Jake through a maze of corruption, exposing lies, and ultimately bringing down a powerful, ruthless criminal. The story wasn't just about a brave K9 and his rescuer. It was about the power of truth, the unyielding pursuit of justice, and the unexpected ways healing can find you. Jake had set out to save a dog, and in doing so, he had found his own salvation. He had found a new partner, a new purpose, and a renewed sense of hope. The scars Ringo carried were not just physical, they were a symbol of the enduring strength of spirit, the ability to rise from the ashes, and the profound, transformative power of connection. Their life together wasn't always dramatic. Most days were filled with routine patrols, training exercises, and the quiet companionship of two partners who understood each other implicitly. But every now and then, a call would come in. A scent would lead them into the shadows, and Ringo's innate courage, combined with Jake's unwavering resolve, would once again make a difference. The Havenwood Police Department, bolstered by the renewed trust of the community, continued its efforts to cleanse the city of corruption. Thorne's empire was systematically dismantled, his assets seized, his co-conspirators brought to justice. Havenwood was slowly, painstakingly rebuilding, becoming a city where justice was not just an ideal, but a tangible reality, fiercely protected by those who served, and at the heart of it all, a silent, enduring force for good. Was the partnership of Officer Jake Riley and K-9 Ringo, the man who had faced his grief and found new purpose, the dog who had faced an inferno and emerged a hero, together. They were a testament to the fact that even in the darkest of times, light can prevail, justice can triumph, and a profound, lasting bond can be forged in the most unexpected of fires